Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kardashev people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kardashev people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on trade goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world. And it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
At some point in its long and very interesting history, our dear planet Earth was sort of snoozing, just doing its planetary thing, spinning around the sun. And then, bam, life starts getting fancy. Plants and animals start strutting their stuff, showing off their complexity. Fast forward a bit, about 65 million years ago to be exact, and a cosmic disaster strikes, or at least that's what we presume. An asteroid probably smashed into Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and other big animals. We can't pinpoint specifics about the asteroid, but we do know that it was extremely large and it crashed into our precious planet, creating a dusty mess that settled everywhere. You can still find remnants of that dust layer in sedimentary rocks today. If you dig beneath it, you'll uncover a whole bunch of fossils. These prehistoric creatures were living it up before the asteroid crashed the party. Think of it as the planet going on a cleaning spree. leaving a bunch of empty spaces waiting to be filled. And guess who took the opportunity? Mammals! These furry little critters were the ones to rise to fame. But why is it that this disaster became such a great opportunity for mammals? It's pretty simple, actually. With no big bullies around, they grew, multiplied, and had a population expanse. All kinds of mammals joined to fill in the blanks. Primates, rodents, basically, the whole furry gang. We're talking about placental mammals, marsupials, and even egg-laying mammals, adding some serious variety to the mix. We like to think of primates as our closest relatives here on Earth. What's their story? Well, around 63 million years ago, just a couple of million years after the dinosaurs' final dance, the primates decided it was time for a family reunion. They split into two groups, the dry-nosed primates, who became the cool monkeys and apes we know today, and the wet-nosed primates, who went off to become lemurs and aye-ayes, hey-hays. The fun didn't stop there. About 58 million years ago, the dry-nosed primates began their own little mission. One special guest called the tarsier, arrived on the scene, featuring big eyes that were perfect for late-night shenanigans. This tarsier took a different path from its primate relatives, embracing its unique niche and evolving separately. To this day, the tarsier is the only primate that feeds exclusively on meat. These little guys have a taste for insects, small birds, rodents, and even lizards. But that's not all that makes them unique. Their eyes are twice the size of their brains. Also, their heads can do a full 180-degree spin, just like an owl. Because of their features, the tarsiers are the true kings and queens of the night. With their superpower of ultrasonic tracking, they can spot their prey instantly. Plus, their legs and feet are like springs ready to launch them into action. They've got this special ankle bone called the tarsus, which gives them those epic leaping skills. Hence the name, if you were wondering. But let's leave these little critters to rest and get back to our story, shall we? About 55 million years ago, the Earth cranked up the heat, literally. This sudden hot pod was a bit too much for many deep ocean dwellers and plants to handle, and they bid their farewells. But hey, every goodbye is an opportunity for something new, right? The oceanic mammals known as cetaceans, saw their chance and took it. They splashed into those empty niches, becoming the rulers of the sea. In this category of creatures, you can find the blue whale and the dolphin. A special primate guest made an appearance around 47 million years ago. Scientists now affectionately call the fossil of such a creature Ida. This little wonder caused quite a stir, initially hailed as the missing link in human evolution. But here's the hilarious part. It turned out Ida was not one of us dry-nosed primates, but a cheeky wet-nosed one. Moving forward to 40 million years ago, this is when another big event happened in the primate world. The New World monkeys, our distant cousins, decided to take a different path and branch off from our lineage of Old World monkeys. They packed their bags and set off to conquer South America, where they're still living it up today. What's the difference between the two, you might ask? Well, one crucial thing that sets them apart is the fact that the Old World monkeys had nostrils that pointed downwards. Around 25 million years ago, another troop of apes entered the scene, and these guys had something special, the lack of a tail. These unique creatures would go on to become our closest relatives. We're talking apes and great apes, the cool gang who share a whole lot of genetic similarities with us. The first ape to break free from the monkey madness was the gibbon. About 18 million years ago is when this little acrobat swung into the picture. A few million years later, the great apes made their grand entrance too. Orangutans were the pioneers, venturing into the wilds of southern Asia. We're getting closer and closer to the present. It was 7 million years ago when the great apes took a major fork in the evolutionary road. One path led to our ancestors, the future Homo sapiens, and the other path led to chimpanzees and bonobos. These two primate branches remained united for a few million years before finally going their separate ways. 5.6 million years ago, a game-changing ape, called Ardipithecus, made its way into our evolutionary history. It had a special talent, bipedalism. That's right, this was one of the first apes to walk on 2 feet, probably making its primate buddies raise an eyebrow or two. The real showstoppers, however, arrived around 4 million years ago, the Australopithecus crew. These were the earliest members of the Hominina hominina subtribe, our tribe. What made them so special? Well, probably the fact that they brought some serious tools to the game. Stone tools, to be precise. It seems that at some point in their evolution, these clever primates started using stones to make their lives easier. Now here comes a crucial turning point in our story. About 2 million years ago, our ancestors faced a food shortage. Survival of the fittest was the name of the game, and 2 strategies emerged. Group 1 went for stronger jaws, allowing them to chomp on tough foods like nuts. Group 2 had a different idea. They opted for weaker jaws, but bigger brains. They wanted access to a wider range of food options. Obviously, the bigger-brained group took the prize. And here's where our gang comes into play. Around 2.5 million years ago, a type of primate also known as handyman made its mark on history. These clever beings had larger brains and knew how to put those neurons to good use. About 1.9 million years ago, a new star emerged, Homo erectus. These creatures not only walked upright, but also had brains that were almost twice the size of the handyman's. They took the world by surprise, becoming the first of our direct ancestors to venture out of the African continent. They even knew how to tame fire. Approximately 700,000 years ago, the world witnessed a culinary revolution. The earliest evidence of cooking appeared. And around 500,000 years ago, our ancestors decided it was time to become a bit more fashionable, donning the first evidence of clothing. Our very own species came to be just 300,000 years ago. Told you we were late to the party. But the world was never the same after the appearance of Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern humans. Alongside our other relatives, we emerged, ready to conquer the world with our innovative minds and complex societies. The exact path of our evolution remains a bit of a mystery. But what we do know for sure is that Neanderthals joined the party around at some point too. As Homo sapiens flourished, so did our capacity for language. Modern speech is believed to have emerged almost hand in hand with our species. We started expressing ourselves, sharing stories, and shaping the world with our words. So, there you have it. It took 13.8 billion years of cosmic history for humans to make their entrance. Think about it. 99.998% of the time since the Big Bang, we weren't even around. Our species, Homo sapiens, is the toddler of the Earth's family, existing for just the tiniest fraction of the universe's timeline. Yet, in this blink of an eye, we've managed to unravel the entire story that led to our existence. The story won't end with us. It's an ongoing saga, still being written with every passing moment.
You're walking down the street. You see a strange-looking antique shop called Ageless Trinkets of Mr. Bright. You're curious, so you enter there. You take a look at all the weird stuff. Suddenly, an old folded parchment paper catches your attention. It's a world map, but something's off with it. Instead of showing the countries as you know them, it shows the locations of 4 mythical lost worlds and civilizations. Mr. Bright, the shop owner, comes next to you after realizing your shock. This map won't let you find these places or anything, but I can explain to you the legends behind them if you want, he says. Let me begin with Atlantis. You might know it as Aquaman's underwater kingdom, but Atlantis, the fictional island, was actually first introduced in 2 of Plato's works. According to him, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization that existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and and its story had been passed down by poets, authors, and others. He wrote about Atlantis and its citizens to give a moral lesson and to teach about the dangers of arrogance, as well as the eventual downfall of those who are after too much power. In his dialogues, Plato stated that Atlantis was a great and powerful empire that was respected in all parts of the world. It was founded by beings who were half deities and half human, and became a great naval power after a while. Being an island filled with gold, silver, and other precious metals certainly helped their case. But besides that, it was also known for its breathtaking architecture and state-of-the-art technology, as well as its countless rare and exotic wild animals. Atlanteans were proud of their great achievements and the perfection of their civilization, but their excessive pride was going to bring their downfall. They believed they were so superior that they could gain control over any nation. This led them to launch a series of invasions. They conquered many of the Mediterranean lands, but when it was time to enter Athens, Athenians pushed back with an extraordinary force, so the Atlanteans were finally defeated. Plato stated that deities then got angry at Atlanteans because of how wicked, greedy, and immoral they became. So they punished them by sending earthquakes, which caused Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. Although the earliest written records of Atlantis were Plato's works, some people still believed his story to be based on truth and tried to identify the island of Atlantis with actual countries. Some people suggested it may have been located in the Mediterranean Sea, near the coast of Spain or Italy. Others thought it may have been located in the Caribbean, off the coast of Central or South America, but there was no solid evidence to support any of these claims. One theory, in particular, seemed more plausible than the others, though. Located in the Aegean Sea, the island of Santorini was the home of a highly advanced Minoan society. However, due to a huge volcanic eruption, it was destroyed about 3,600 years ago, causing the Minoan civilization to suddenly disappear. These similarities between the fictional Atlanteans and the historical Minoans made Santorini a good candidate for the speculations. Yet again, there were still major flaws with it, such as how the time when Plato said Atlantis was destroyed doesn't coincide with the time of Santorini's eruption. So Atlantis still continues to be regarded as nothing more than a popular legend in the scientific world. Now, let's move toward the northeast direction on the map, Mr. Bright says. According to Celtic Breton mythology, there once was a magnificent city called Ys, also known as Caris, that towered over Douarnenez Bay in France's Brittany region. It was the most wealthy city in the entire Atlantic. It was especially famous for its beautiful gardens and buildings, and its citizens were all living comfortably and happily there. Dahut, who was King Gradlon's daughter in Breton legends and literature, had a deep love for the sea. She begged her father to build a city at the edge of the sea, and that is how the city of Ys was established. Little did she know that she would be the one responsible for the destruction of her father's beloved gift. You see, since the city was surrounded by the sea, it needed to be protected by a dike equipped with floodgates, and these gates could only be opened at low tide. And the only one who had the keys to these gates was the king himself. One day, a handsome red knight arrived at the city, but couldn't pass the gates. Dahut was so taken by him that she wanted to let him in. She knew that her father was the keeper of the only key to the city, so she sneaked into his room and stole it from him. Then she gave it to the Red Knight so that he could enter the city and they could be together. However, the Red Knight turned out to be the Prince of Darkness, and he intentionally left the gate open to the raging sea. The waves soon swallowed all of Ys. King Gradlon was able to escape on his magical horse, but Dahut couldn't. She turned into an evil mermaid who lured sailors into the sea. Today, if you go to Quimper, a city in Brittany, northwest France, you can find the statue of King Gradlon riding on his horse. Although the city of Ys is a legend, Brittany coast locals believe that on the days when the waters are calm, you can can still hear the tolls of the city bells deep under the sea, if you listen carefully. Mr. Bright then points at the Indian Ocean on the map and says, "Now, have you heard about Lemuria?" Back in the mid-1800s, a few scientists suggested that there was once a continent that existed in the Indian Ocean, somewhere close to the south of modern-day Sri Lanka. The first one to popularize this theory was the British lawyer and zoologist Philip Lutley Sclater. In his paper, The Mammals of Madagascar, he stated that he found lemur fossils in India, and not in Africa. However, this discovery was extremely shocking to him because of the fact that lemurs' original homeland, Madagascar, is much closer to Africa. He proposed that this was possible only if some larger continent connected the two once. He stated that this continent must have eventually sunk to the ocean floor. He then named it Lemuria, and hence the theory was born. People who came after Sclater took his theory a step further and thought that Lemuria was also the home of an extinct race of humans called Lemurians, who had 4 arms and enormous bodies, and were also the ancestors of modern-day humans, as well as lemurs. Of course, as new scientific discoveries were made on plate tectonics, evolution, and the study of DNA, the theories regarding the fictional continent called Lemuria were debunked. The last fictional land on the map is Agartha, Mr. Bright says. Taking its roots from Eastern mysticism, one legend says there's a kingdom called Agartha that is located deep beneath the surface of the earth. It's where all 4 corners of the world are connected by paths and tunnels. It is said that there's a secret entrance into Agartha hidden in the Gobi Desert, and it's built by Agarthans themselves using advanced technology that can't be detected by us, the surface folks. According to some beliefs, Agartha exists to counterbalance the energies of those who live above the surface. While we live in a state of rush and heightened emotions, this world beneath us is the total opposite. Some even say that those who escaped Atlantis fled here to continue their lives inside the Earth's core. And yet, others think it's actually a land that's crawling with all kinds of monsters. But there's no need to be scared, since modern science proved Earth's core is not actually hollow and is a solid hot iron ball. So you can cancel your journey plans to the center of the Earth if you've made any. Thanks, Mr. Bright.
Chances are, we're going to find life beyond Earth by 2035, and there's no need to travel to a galaxy far, far away. Our Milky Way galaxy is full of totally suitable environments. Don't get too hyped up though. We're talking about microbes or chemical markers, not Hollywood-like green humanoids. Even so, when we finally find traces of life, it will change how we see our place in the universe. NASA's Kepler Space Telescope discovered something incredible. Almost every star has planets, and many of these planets might be habitable. Rocky planets like Earth and Mars are even more common in our galaxy than gas giants like Saturn and Jupiter. Also, we already know that our galaxy is very rich in water. There's water in interstellar clouds where stars and planets form, in the debris disks around other stars, in comets, just everywhere. What's really hard though is finding life itself. Ideally, to finally find it, we need to land on every single planet out there and literally check under each rock. But thanks to the newest research, we can at least narrow down the search to potentially habitable worlds. The James Webb Space Telescope, a super powerful telescope that was launched into space in 2021, is onto this. It checks the atmospheres of nearby super-Earths, rocky planets that are a bit bigger than Earth. It searches for life-related gases, chemicals that can only be produced by living things. And they already found some clues. For example, they detected signs of such a chemical on a planet called K2-18b. This planet is 120 light-years away, which is pretty close on a space scale. This planet is in the Goldilocks zone, which means a zone around the star where the temperatures are just right for liquid water to exist. It orbits a red dwarf star, the smallest type of star there is. Such stars are a bit fainter than our Sun. It will take about a year to check if these hints of life are real. If so, it would mean that life is much more common than we previously thought. But even if it's not, there are 10 more Goldilocks planets on their list to study. The James Webb Space Telescope is a very cool tool, but it has limits. It can't detect small Earth-like planets due to their size. To fix this, NASA plans to launch another tool, the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope. This one will be even better at spotting such planets and life-related chemicals. And also, we have the SETI project. SETI stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This project has been on a hunt for extraterrestrial creatures since the 1980s. They also believe that we'll find signs of life within the next 10 years. Not so long ago, they started a super big and cool project. It's called COSMIC, and it uses an array of radio telescopes in New Mexico. You might have seen those in the movie Contact. COSMIC allows scientists to listen to hundreds of thousands and potentially millions of star systems at the same time. If there are any interesting signals, scientists can check them right away, instead of waiting for weeks or even months. The signals themselves are often very sudden and short, but COSMIC can detect even the shortest ones that last nanoseconds. COSMIC can also help with other research, like studying mysterious and unexplained fast radio bursts, or even dark matter. This is the biggest and most powerful tool for searching for extraterrestrial life we've ever created. But it's not enough to just listen. Why don't we reach out ourselves? NASA has sent some signals into deep space. In 2002, their Deep Space Network sent a signal to the Pioneer 10 satellite. But there was an obstacle in the path. A white dwarf star, 27 light-years away from Earth. If there's a planet around this star, perhaps the signal reached them too. If there are any intelligent species there, we could receive a reply by 2029. The DSN keeps sending powerful transmissions into space. These signals will bump into 222 stars within the next 3 centuries. Maybe someday we'll receive a reply from somewhere far away. But why haven't we received a response yet? There are about 200 billion galaxies in the universe, each with around 100 billion stars. If just 1% of those stars had one planet, that's still 200 quintillion possible planets. And we can narrow it down even further. If the chance of them having life is 1 in a trillion, that would still leave us a few 100,000 planets. So, where is everyone? This is a famous question known as the Fermi Paradox. The first possibility isn't that terrifying. It's possible that the universe is full of life, but this life isn't intelligent in our traditional sense. Some planets might have microbes, birds, or space dinosaurs. This is called the Great Filter Theory. It suggests that there are certain filters that life has to overcome in order to become intelligent, and maybe other species just haven't overcome them yet. Think about it. Life on Earth started in the ocean, then crawled onto land, diversified into many forms, went extinct in massive events 5 times, evolved again, and eventually led to humans. We built societies, developed healthcare, and only then started searching for another life. There's another idea called the Gaian bottleneck hypothesis, which suggests basically the same thing. While it might not be too hard for basic life to start, it's incredibly tough for that life to survive and thrive over long periods. Venus might have had oceans and Earth-like conditions too, but something went wrong. Its oceans boiled away because of a runaway greenhouse effect. Now it's sterile. Mars also had liquid water on its surface once, and both the Moon and Mercury had thick atmospheres for a short time. Meanwhile, Earth has had liquid water on its surface for almost its entire existence. It's super rare and remarkable for a planet to hold temperatures from 32 to 212 degrees Fahrenheit for millions of years. So, maybe it's a mistake to look for intelligent life, especially the one that uses the same technology as we do. It evolved under completely different conditions after all. That's also where the so-called Drake equation comes in. It's a formula that gives us a chance to calculate the potential of life becoming intelligent on a planet. To calculate the result, we need to know several variables: how many stars there are, how many of them have planets, the chance of these planets having life, and so on. Unfortunately, we don't know these numbers yet, and the result might be insignificant. But let's assume that there is at least one other intelligent species. Why haven't we met yet? There might be many reasons. Maybe they don't think we're interesting enough, or maybe the problem is with us. Perhaps we keep missing their signals, or maybe we miss the entire species itself. The universe is insanely huge and ancient. It's over 14 billion years old. If we compress Earth's entire evolutionary history into a 24-hour day, life starts at 4 a.m. Dinosaurs go extinct at 11:40 p.m. Human-like creatures appear 2 minutes before midnight. In this analogy, humans have existed for just 77 seconds, and our technology capable of detecting extraterrestrial life is even newer, less than a second. With such vast distances and time spans, the chances of us existing at the same time as other civilizations are slim. If their civilization lasted only a few millennia, we could easily miss them entirely. But that doesn't mean we should give up our search. Scientists were worried that Earth's radio signals had dimmed over time. But a recent study showed that it's actually the opposite. The numbers of our satellites keeps growing, and this makes our planet more detectable. By the end of the decade, we could have 100,000 satellites, making Earth incredibly bright in the radio spectrum. If there is an advanced civilization out there, they will easily spot us even from very far distances. Astronomers are super optimistic about it. There's a high chance they'll find extraterrestrial creatures while you and I are still around.
Now, fungi are everywhere. You may see mold on an old lemon in your fridge. It's a fungus. You may notice fungi on your mattress and the tiles in your bathroom. There may be several million species of fungi in the world, and most of them are unexplored. Of the fungus among us, some are pretty harmless, such as those that appear in the dark corner of your fridge, and others can turn a living creature into a zombie. And this is not some movie, but reality. Let's visit a rainforest to see how Kardashev's fungus turns the life of some insects into a nightmare. A tiny, almost invisible fungus spore floats in the air and lands on the ant's back. It doesn't notice anything and works all day for the good of the colony. Meanwhile, the spore penetrates its body. A couple of days later, the ant's behavior gets strange. The poor thing shivers, it sleeps badly, and it doesn't eat enough. Other ants see it as a threat, so they expel their brother from the anthill. But the infected ant doesn't want to return because it can't control its life anymore. The fungus multiplies inside it. It spreads throughout the body through the insect's blood. It slowly captures the entire nervous system, begins to control the muscles, and affects the brain. Cordyceps change the ant's behavior and make it move in the direction it wants, against the ant's will. At this point, the animal turns into a zombie. It wanders through the forest alone and is looking for some high place. It can be a blade of grass, a plant, or a bush. Next, the ant climbs to a height of 10 inches and tightly grabs the stem with its jaws. Nothing can remove it from there because the ant can't relax its jaws anymore. The insect remains to wait there for several days. All this time, the fungus sort of feeds on the ant and grows slowly. It comes out of the ant from different sides, twists, and diverges in different directions. Then the parasite grows, pulls up, and releases thousands of small spores into the air. They fly all over the forest, fall into the water, or leaves, animal fur, or in the hair of people walking in the woods. In almost all of these places, spores don't live long, but some of them will find their host. Some spores can get on the area with working ants, and when the fungus lands on some of them, everything will start again. Now imagine that this tiny monster evolves and starts attacking people. Scientists said this was impossible since the human body temperature is too high for fungi. But after all, the temperature of the whole planet is gradually rising, right? This means that the fungus will adapt to warming. And when it happens, tiny spores will penetrate the human body through the ears, nose, and mouth and get into the blood. There, it will begin its reproduction and capture of the nervous system. The person will have a fever and then experience hallucinations. Soon, they will lose their sanity and want only one thing: to share the fungus with others. If the fungus can make an ant cling tightly to a leaf with its jaws, then it will be able to control people's muscles and even increase their strength. But infected people won't attack others. They'll climb on roofs of buildings or trees and fall asleep forever. The fungus, meanwhile, germinates and releases its spores. The wind picks them up and spreads them all over the world. During the first weeks of infection, while people are still not prepared enough, fungi will spread rapidly and take over the planet. The remnants of the survivors who manage to avoid contact will hide underground and then build bunkers. First, gas masks will become more valuable than gold. Still, when people realize that humankind's survival is more important than business, gas masks will become publicly available. As terrible as it may sound, all this is good news, because you don't have to run away from the infected and fight with them. All cities will introduce quarantine zones. People will live inside buildings with powerful air ventilation systems and go outside only with gas masks. If people understand they are infected, they will calmly inform the police and leave the city. They will get food supplies, and their loved ones will get permission to be with them in gas masks until the infected fall asleep. There will be fungi everywhere on the streets. You'll see how colossal mushroom plantations grow on the roofs and walls of buildings. The air will resemble a misty haze because of the intense concentration of fungal spores. But it's not dangerous if you have a gas mask. The zombie apocalypse will be pretty calm and quiet. But still, it will be difficult in the world, not because of the fungi, but because of other people. Not all cities will be in order. Anarchy will reign in the world. Looters and robbers in gas masks will walk on the streets. Food will take a lot of work to get. Electricity in cities won't run 24/7, but just a couple of hours per day. But all this time, there will be hope for a bright future in people's hearts. Scientists will actively work on a vaccine and invent it sooner or later. But the fungus will also evolve. Perhaps it will defeat the vaccine, and then people will have to create a new cure. Also, the fungus may try to switch to other carriers. These can be birds, livestock, and any mammals. Imagine an infected deer with a big growing fungus on its horns. Microorganisms will rule the world, and the population of large creatures will decrease. The fungus will adapt to the water for thousands of years and begin to infect the fish. And soon, the whole planet will turn into one giant mushroom. Okay, calm down, that's not going to happen. And here's why. Cordyceps have spent millions of years of evolution to adapt precisely to the cold body of an ant, no more, no less. The fungus's internal abilities are designed only to infect certain insects living next to them. For example, Cordyceps from Thailand can infect an ant somewhere in Los Angeles. Therefore, don't worry that it will suddenly become able to attack a human. There is no suddenness in evolution. It's a long and challenging process. In addition, the fungus has no reason to switch to warm-blooded carriers. It feels fine in the environment of ants and has no problems with multiplying. If ants disappear as a species and people start living next to the fungus, it will begin evolution, but it may take thousands or even millions of years of genetic changes. However, don't relax yet. There is a type of fungi that has met all the conditions to gain the ability to infect humans. It's called Candida auris. It was discovered in Japan in 2009 and shocked scientists when they found it inside people. Biologists said the fungus could evolve because of rising temperatures in some areas. A few years later, the fungus was found in many countries around the world. Antifungal medications do little to help against it. Its symptoms are difficult to determine at the beginning, and the consequences of its infection can be severe, especially in people with poor immunity. Scientists are concerned about this microorganism, but are already making a vaccine. The medicine helped to defeat the fungus in mice, and soon doctors hope to release a vaccine for humans. Infection occurs through human fluids, blood, saliva, and sputum. Fungi are a separate kingdom on our planet, but not all of them are bad. They're necessary for our Earth to support life. They enrich the soil with valuable substances and digest harmful substances. Fungi help plants get out of the water and adapt to land millions of years ago. 90% of plants won't survive today without fungi. There are organisms that look like huge nets. These networks of special tubes are called mycelium. We only see the tip of the iceberg, which is called mushrooms. It doesn't have one form. It can transform, move through underground labyrinths, and change routes. There's a lot of information about it, but this is a topic for a separate video. Meanwhile, mushrooms are delicious when sautéed over a low flame with onions and butter. Try it.
Here's an ordinary fish. And here's a fish that was supposed to become a human, but it didn't. And not because it didn't come out of the ocean. The second fish has more intelligent eyes, but there's almost no difference between them. And that's why... Oh, and do you see that silhouette in the shadow? This big ugly monster is one of the key characters in this story, and it hates the intelligent fish. But I'll tell you more about that later. So, the ocean world is an eternal struggle for survival. The big and strong eat those who are smaller and weaker. 400 million years ago, it was the same, only on an even larger scale. Real monsters inhabited the ocean. Giant reptilian fish ate long sea centipedes. Some fish were covered with bony shells. Others had razor-sharp teeth. As a result, some weaker fish escaped the ocean to survive. Other creatures left it to get food, or out of curiosity. And so, according to the theory of evolution, in the next millions of years, these fish began to grow limbs and hair and climb trees. And you know what happened next. And now, let's imagine that nothing forced fish to go to dry land. What if the ocean wasn't so dangerous, and there were a lot of algae and phytoplankton, and fewer ancient and giant sharks? There's food and there are no enemies. Why would fish need to leave this place and spend a couple 100 million years growing limbs? Fish could chill and hang out in the water. Some reached the surface, but they didn't like it there. Strong winds, lightning flashes, it all looked unfriendly. Millions of years passed, and fish were still around. More dangerous sea inhabitants appeared, but fish just grew longer fins to swim faster. Other fish grew plates on their tails to fend off enemies. But in general, most fish still looked the same as they did millions of years ago. Their brains were developing. They learned how to communicate with one another using echolocation and movements of tails and fins. All day long, fish swam, looked for food, multiplied, and hung out together. It made no sense for them to evolve. And now, let's take a look at the history of humans. So, fish came to land and grew limbs. Then the struggle for survival began. Some creatures became carnivores. Others turned into herbivores. Some ate grass, and others noticed ripe fruit on trees. These crawling creatures started reaching for fruit. After millions of years of such attempts, the creatures' limbs began to grow longer. They stood on their back legs and finally became upright. These ancient animals, the ancestors of primates, learned to climb trees to get more fruit. Then some of them started using stones to crack nutshells. Others began to throw sticks into branches to knock down ancient apples. The more these animals interacted with the environment, the more their brains developed. In addition to saber-toothed tigers and other ancient monsters that tried to eat primates, there were also bad weather conditions that caused a lot of problems. Ancient apes began to hide in caves and even create shelters from branches and leaves. Then someone accidentally started a fire, and it changed the rules of the game. New neuron connections opened up in the brain, and it led to abstract thinking. People built bonfires in caves and watched flames cast shadows on the walls. images began to form in their heads. The ancestors of people began to make drawings. And so, step by step, over millions of years, they evolved into Homo sapiens. Of course, no one knows precisely how it was, but let's assume that evolution worked this way. The struggle for survival formed the human brain. And now, let's go back to the ocean, where fish swim. They can move from side to side, up and down, and they don't need to reach any branches and fruit. Food is floating everywhere around them. Fish are cold-blooded, so they don't freeze. They don't need to hide from the rain or anything else, so they don't need to build roofs and shelters and start a fire. But still, something changes in their minds. Fish often swim to the surface to see this bright light from the sun. Through the clear water, they see the starry sky and the bright moon. And of course, these pictures form new neural connections in their brains. Fish are curious, and they think about how to explore the land. Their gill-based respiratory system doesn't allow them to be out of the water for a long time. Fish begin to contemplate this world. Over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, they learn to communicate with one another and begin to understand how the cycle of life in the ocean works. Some fish form large colonies and build houses inside coral reefs. But these houses look like big anthills, not like buildings. Fish stay there to hide from enemies and to have rest. Also, fish meet other enemies, birds. Gulls and pelicans catch lunch when fish rise close to the surface. Small fish decide never to swim there and create a law forbidding them from approaching the surface. The appearance of this unspoken statute forms society. Some fish train to fend off seagulls. Fish hold sharp stones, pieces of coral, or shells in their teeth. And when gulls catch them, these fish hit the bird's feet with corals. Also, fish manage to catch their winged enemies. When some seagull dives under the water, fish attack it from all sides. They do this to study the seagull's body and understand how it can fly and breathe on the surface. Fish become wise creatures, like highly developed dolphins. They understand more and more about the planet, but don't strive to get out of the water because there's no need for it. But then, they discover something creepy. Fish swim toward the shore and see how big bald creatures without scales, with smooth skin, arms, and legs, dive into the water. Fish swim closer to get to know them, but these creatures catch them with their webbed hands. Now fish have another, more dangerous enemy, the sea people. They are intelligent, cruel, and strong. To understand these creatures, let's go back to the real world and look at seals, dolphins, whales, and walruses. All these animals are mammals, which means warm blood flows in them. But why are they so different from fish? Seals and sea lions have the same ancestor as dogs. Manatees and elephants have common origins. Whales and dolphins are marine versions of hippos and hoofed animals. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the ancestors of all these mammals were cold-blooded fish. They got out of the ocean and began to explore the land. Their bodies started to change, and their blood temperature rose. But some of these animals decided not to go far from the water. Those that left the ocean became dogs, bears, and elephants. And those who stayed close to the oceans and seas became mammals adapted to the water. They didn't explore the land for various reasons. Some animals hid in the water from land enemies. Perhaps some couldn't spend a long time under the scorching sun. They transformed into animals with fins. They don't have gills, but can hold their breath underwater for a few minutes. And now, imagine if primates living in trees moved to the shore. Their skin would lose its fur, webbing would grow on their fingers, and their whole body would get covered with a thick layer of fat. They would develop intelligence and become sea people. Each of them would weigh as much as a polar bear because of subcutaneous fat. The fact is that all marine mammals need a lot of fat to protect their body from the cold. A large amount of fat makes them mobile and fast in the water. Now, intelligent, peaceful fish have to fight with cruel sea people. But who will win in this conflict? I think we need another video to find out.
We've been dreaming about life on Mars for a long time. Not only about growing potatoes there in the future, but also about all the potatoes that could have been there in the past. Has there ever been life on Mars? Recently, scientists have found something that could be evidence of that. Let's find out what happened. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun. A human hasn't set foot on Mars yet, but robots have set their wheels. The first spacecraft that visited the Red Planet were NASA Viking landers. They flew there back in 1976 and sent us a lot of interesting data. Back then, we didn't know anything about Mars. To us, it looked like a cold, lifeless desert. But since we're so similar, scientists began to wonder, has it always been like this? Or is it possible that once Mars used to be thriving and full of life? And in 2022, NASA's Mars rover Perseverance found something that could shed a light on this mystery. But first of all, what is Perseverance? Scientists have suggested that if there was life on Mars once, it's unlikely that it could simply disappear without a trace. It must have left some traces, perhaps underground, where they would be protected from radioactive solar tantrums and other nastiness. So we need to check the rocks. It's important to note that we aren't looking for life on Mars right now. There most likely isn't any. Instead, we want to look into the distant past of our twin planet. We're talking billions of years ago, when Mars could have been warm, green, and far from lifeless. In other words, we have to find dead microbes and various chemical compounds similar to ones on the Earth. This is the mission of our main character, Perseverance. It arrived on Mars in February of 2021. The spacecraft landed on the bottom of the 30-mile-wide Jezero crater, and after landing, it scooted over to the west, to the place that prompted scientists to choose Jezero for research. This place is a dried-up river delta, and this former river is already more than 3.5 billion years old. The Jezero crater itself was once a large lake. Yup, apparently there was life on Mars, and scientists have suggested that these places would be perfect as bodyguards of microbes. That's exactly what bacteria do on Earth. They hide, being still in the depths of lakes and ponds, so we could probably find traces there. The researchers believe that this particular lake has the highest scientific value in the entire mission. The highest chance to find rocks on which such bacteria could survive is here in Jezero. So Perseverance went to the delta. The row wasn't easy though. The rover missed a little and landed further than planned. As one famous movie said, "This little maneuver's going to cost us 51 years." Fortunately, Perseverance took only 1 year, and on the way, it was able to explore Jezero a little. The rover uses a complex built-in tool to explore the world. The tool is called Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman and Luminescence for Organics and Chemicals, or just SHERLOC. Boy, NASA sure loves its acronyms. As the device approached the delta, the signal of organic molecules became stronger. Soon, these signals were everywhere, and besides, they were the brightest that the scientists have ever seen. What does it mean? Elementary, my dear Watson. You know, Sherlock. It's time to dig. Since July 2021, Perseverance has drilled and collected 4 thin cores of sedimentary rock. The total number of collected rocks at the moment is 12. This is the first time in history that we're collecting something like this on another planet. These 4 cores were found on 2 rocks called Skinner Ridge and Wildcat Ridge. The first pair of cores, the ones from the Skinner Ridge, don't seem very interesting at first glance. They're quite close to what we can find in many places on Earth. However, if we look at them closer, we'll see that they're dotted with round grains of some dark material. These dark grains could have once been deposited on them by an ancient river, the same one that flowed into Jezero. It's possible that the river brought them from places hundreds of miles away from Jezero, and that's pretty cool. If we study these cores, we'll be able to learn even more about the far corners of Mars. Well, there are no corners on it, but you get the idea. Then, in April 2022, Perseverance did arrive at the delta, and then scientists finally found what they were looking for. The discovery, to put it mildly, excited them. They found 2 more cores, which held organic substances. This pair was taken from the Wildcat Ridge. It's found very close to the Skinner Ridge, but the 2 rocks are quite different from each other. These samples are lighter in color and more uniform. Most likely, they're mudstone, an unusual rock similar to clay, but harder and unable to absorb water. They're also finer grained than the cores of the Skinner Ridge. Why does it matter? Because the finer the grains in the stone, the more likely it is that there may be some traces of a past life in it. On Earth, fine-grained stones most often lie on the bottoms of ponds and in similar places. There, they can preserve the remains of dead organisms and similar stuff for years. And this is exactly what we found on them. Additionally, according to scientists, there was more organic matter in these 2 cores than in any other place studied by Perseverance so far. It probably accumulated there while the lake was gradually evaporating billions of years ago. So, there really was life on Mars? Well, let's slow down a little. Organic substances are molecules holding carbon. And yes, on Earth, they're most often associated with life, but not always. Sometimes they can form as a result of other things. Therefore, we cannot say for sure whether there was life on Mars. We don't know if these molecules really remain from some Martian microbes, or if they're the result of some other things. But the discovery is still very significant. We have to literally keep digging this way. To learn more about this organic matter, scientists need to collect a couple more samples of fine-grained rock. It would also be great to study the material lying around these former reservoirs. Perseverance has already moved to another area, to a place with a beautiful name, Enchanted Lake. Now it needs to look for similar things there. It will also continue to study Lake Jezero. Eventually, Perseverance will climb to the top of the delta and then continue exploring ancient sites outside the crater. Sometime before the end of 2022, Perseverance will probably have 6 or more samples of the Martian cores. Unfortunately, its tools, though complex, are quite limited. This data alone won't be enough for us to get a complete picture. Therefore, NASA plans to send other spacecraft to Jezero in the coming years. Together with the European Space Agency, they're working on the next robotic mission, known as the Mars Sample Return. The name speaks for itself. These devices will arrive and take away all the test tubes from the old Prospector Perseverance. After that, these samples will be delivered to Earth, though not by Amazon Prime, and then scientists will be able to analyze them in advanced laboratories. However, all this will take a really long time. The launch of this mission is scheduled for 2027-2028, and the spacecrafts won't be able to return until 2033. But if everything goes well, it will be the first samples in history delivered to Earth from Mars. In other words, there's still enough space for research, literally. And yes, we don't yet know the true meaning of these finds. But that's why the entire mission was created, right? And who knows? Maybe in a few years we'll finally find out the truth about what happened on Mars billions of years ago. Ooh, check out The Martian! Made you look. So here's the scoop. You're not even born yet, but your parents already know what you're going to look like. In the year 3021, DNA tech is so advanced they can basically pre-program a person. Eye color, hair, face, and nose shape, lips, finger length, body structure – it's as simple as selecting from a drop-down menu, kind of like creating your own character in an RPG. Everyone looks great. No more diets, no more gyms, and a healthy body for everyone. All it takes is a little gene modification and a special liquid full of a couple of million nanobots. Bioengineering and medtech allow people to change their bodies and minds whenever they want. Improved hearing? Done. Now you can hear a fly rub its paws together from the other side of the room. Not that you'd want to. Nanorobots can turn your eyes into binoculars with 100 times zoom. From your 160th floor apartment, you can read the nutrition info on that wrapper lying on the ground. You've got to get a life, pal. Want to fall out of a window and land unharmed? Nanorobots can make it happen. Millions of tiny robots can be sent to cover your bones and muscles if you want to lift a car with one hand. Superheroes aren't really a big thing anymore. Anyone can get superpowers in 3021. And say goodbye to spending years learning a new profession. You don't need to go to college to find a good job. Just download all the skills and knowledge you need. Medical nanorobots can get into your brain and improve your mood. You can become joyful, angry, funny, sad, all in a matter of seconds. The physical brain isn't a mystery anymore, nor is the subconscious mind. That means no more psychologists or psychiatrists. And solving your personal problems? Easy. You have special lenses built into your eyes linked to AI. You can see an analysis of your mind, and AI will even suggest a strategy for improving it. Not getting enough vitamin C? You'll get a notification. Need more protein? Notification. You'll get it. It's awesome! Amazingly, nanorobots open access to your memories. Watch them like movies, any period of your life, anytime you want. You can see happy moments in perfect detail, or permanently delete anything you'd rather not see anymore. Genetic engineering makes it possible to create not only modified humans, but also animals. Scientists bring back extinct fish, birds, and mammals. You can even grow your very own pet from scratch. A dog, cat, small elephant, dinosaur, whatever you want. And if you don't like cleaning up a mess, pick up a pet robot that looks and acts just like a real animal, without all the annoying stuff. In 3021, your body can live for 200 years, but your mind, forever. You can upload your brain data to the cloud. Your way of thinking, habits, attitude, character, memories, your entire personality can be coded and uploaded. You can encode your mind now and download it into a new, modified body, say after you hit your 189th birthday. And this new body doesn't need food or water, only energy. In the future, no one goes hungry. People travel around the galaxy in style. You can upload your consciousness to a computer and beam it over to your other biomechanical body that you had shipped to another planet. If you've got enough money, you can buy several bodies and scatter them in different parts of the galaxy. Then, on your day off, you can teleport your mind to another planet just to get a bit of peace and quiet. If you want to unload your consciousness and download it again in a few hundred years, you've got a choice to make. Be in a 100-year-long dream, or spend the time flying around in an infinite network. You can even put your mind on the internet and do whatever you want. Some people even choose to live inside the web just for a year or two. Matrix, anyone? People have learned to change their surroundings with the help of utility fogs. Imagine a robot the size of a human cell. This robot has several limbs, can change color, temperature, and can connect with other tiny robots. Utility fogs are just trillions of these little guys. They cling to each other and can create any object you want, or they can turn into a sort of hologram, perfect for video calls. The fog can take on any shape. It can be a cup, a painting, a car, a bigger robot, just not anything living. But just because it's the future doesn't mean everyone gets to have fun. This fog tech is crazy expensive. The fogs can create buildings. You can wake up in your beautiful house, go to work, and the house gets automatically folded up and transformed into a small suitcase. Hey there, George Jetson! You can travel around the galaxy with it and transform it into any home you want. Suddenly feel like having a bigger kitchen, different furniture, a rooftop pool, a slide from your bedroom to the kitchen? No problem. And inside your house, things are way different. You don't have to clean up anymore. Dust, dirt, and grime are all taken care of by nanorobots. You're watching a sad movie, crying, going to town on a Kleenex. Then you just toss the used tissue over your shoulder. Right where it lands, your utility fog turns into a small trash can with wheels. It zips over to the kitchen, dumps out the Kleenex, and poof, it disappears. What about an after-movie snack? For centuries, pizza drones have been flying through the streets. At one point, it got a bit ridiculous. There were too many of them. They started crashing into each other and into passing birds. Now, you just order a sandwich or pasta through your special lenses, and the food gets 3D printed. When resources on planet Earth began to run out, people colonized the Moon and Mars. Then, the big breakthrough – a thermonuclear engine, capable of transmigranuclear flabba. Hey, let's just call it a teleporting device. People sent AI robots over to build cities, roads, electrical grids, and water filtration plants. Then, people began to move there permanently. Everyone born on Mars or the Moon was different from us Earthlings. Mars, for example, gets less sunlight than Earth, so Martians have wider pupils. That means if they ever come back to Earth, they'd basically have night vision. But Martians, and people on the Moon, lunatics, have weaker bones. Luckily, they have those handy nanorobots to help them. But with these new discoveries come new risks and dangers. Uploading your consciousness can go horribly wrong. You risk facing virtual viruses that can imprison you in a virtual cage. Many attackers use programs that can erase your mind, just like a plain old file on your desktop. Those nanorobots, they can still be defective sometimes, and instead of upgrading your body, not great. Moving to other planets is crazy risky. We sometimes have to abandon cities on Mars because there's suddenly a 300-year-long dust storm. And space travel, sorry to tell you, never stops being dangerous. Even in 3021, there are loads of forces in the universe that scientists still don't understand. Say you buy a modified robo-body and send it to a beautiful new Martian city. You're on Earth, and you upload your consciousness to a computer and send it on over to the new body. The weather is perfect, the sunsets are epic. Suddenly, a huge asteroid smashes into your house. These kinds of things happen in 3021. The way we live now seems exotic to the people of the future. To breathe and live in a natural body, to eat natural food, to take a real water shower, to learn new info by reading. That stuff freaks them out. At some point, humans learned to travel through time, but immediately banned the new technology. Humanity's living in a utopia, apart from the occasional asteroid ruining that robot body you saved up for a whole year to buy, and any change in the past could mean the end of it. Instead of traveling to the past or the future, people create virtual simulations of their favorite time periods. The most popular simulations? Just going back in time and living a day as an ordinary person in 2021. Powerful quantum computers analyze your genes, calculate what you would have looked like, and recreate an exact you. Life was so much simpler 1,000 years ago. Me? I'm going to 1977. Disco, the Bee Gees, glitter balls, the golden age of music. For some of us.
Don't hold your breath, but we're very close to hitting a major milestone in human history. Some scientists say the next couple of centuries will be a make or break situation for us. Will we be a measly Type 0 civilization forever? Or will we blast off into the stars like the boss-level beings we are? Don't know what a Type 0 civilization is? Let me explain. As our species gets bigger and smarter, our energy needs go through the roof. And that's not just because we all want to keep our hair dryers running, but also because all our fancy machines need energy too. Our transportation devices, factories, and communication tools. The Kardashev scale is useful in measuring how advanced a civilization is, based on how much energy they've got. So far, there are 7 theoretical levels a civilization can be at, according to most specialists. I'll spare you the Google search. Some scientists have estimated that humans are at a mere level of 0.72. We're not even a type 1 yet? The scale was invented by a scientist named Nikolai Kardashev in 1964. He created it to help look for signs of life in space through the signals it might give off. His scale has 3 main levels that show the amount of energy a civilization has access to. Over the years, other scientists added many more levels, which are even more advanced. This scale not only shows energy access, but also how much knowledge a civilization has. A Type 1 designation is when a species can gather and store all the energy from a nearby star to power its growing population. This means we need to increase our energy production 100,000 times to reach this status. Some scientists say we could reach Type 1 in 100 to 200 years. But for that, we would need to harness all the energy on Earth. It sounds amazing, but compared to what advanced societies with higher rankings can do, this is just a basic level of control. The next level of civilization is called Type 2. They can control their whole nearby star and use all of its energy. One way we might be able to do this one day is by building something called a Dyson sphere. I'll spare you the technical details, but it's like a giant ball that goes around a star and collects all its energy, then sends it back to the planet it came from. With this much energy, nothing in science could destroy a Type 2 civilization. If humans became a Type 2 and a moon-sized object was headed toward Earth, we could just vaporize it, or even move Jupiter to block it. Type 3 civilizations become energy experts and can travel through the galaxy. Humans who evolve into this type may look very different from us, like machines with both biological and robotic parts. They might even look down on regular humans. Who knows? It's unlikely you'll make friends with a Type 3 person, that's what I'm saying. These humans might also have colonies of robots that can replicate and spread across the galaxy. But there are limits to their travel because of the laws of physics, or at least those that we know today. That is, unless they invent a new way to travel faster than light or teleport through wormholes, which are currently only theories. Kardashev believed that a Type 4 civilization could not exist. That's the reason why he did not go beyond a Type 3 on his original scale. He thought Type 3 was the limit any species could achieve. Some people agree with him, but others think there could be even higher levels of civilization. Type 4 civilizations and up were theoreticized by other scientists. A Type 4, for instance, would be able to harness all the energy in the universe and even live inside black holes. This kind of technology would need to use laws of physics that we don't understand yet and might not even have the resources to discover at this point. Type 5 is even more mind-boggling. This would be a level where beings have the power to control the universe itself. It would also exist in a world with multiple parallel universes. Humans are far from ever reaching this level, but if we take care of our planet and each other, who's to say it can't be possible one day? These types of civilizations would have the ability to travel to different universes and even be able to create our own. They have control over reality, and their population would be so large, it would be, in theory at least, indestructible. A Type 6 civilization is even more powerful. They would have the means not only to create and travel to other universes, but also to control the basic functioning rules of these worlds. They would exist in a lot of different universes at the same time, and they could affect all the laws of physics as we know them. They also exist in many different versions of space and time, with different pasts and futures. A civilization that is categorized as a Type 7 or K7 is capable of traveling and controlling the entire omniverse. The omniverse is a term that refers to every universe, dimension, and reality that exists. This level of power is thought to come from an individual rather than a civilization, as the civilization would have merged into one entity that is all-knowing, all-powerful, and present everywhere. Okay, let's slow down for a bit. Before we reach all these incredible levels, we at least need to become level 1, right? But what would that take? Right now, humans are not advanced enough to be considered a Type 1 civilization because we only use a few sources of energy, like wood, coal, and oil. But there are many other sources out there that we haven't discovered or used yet. We'd need to rely solely on renewable sources, like wind, sun, and water for our energy needs. This energy would be so accessible that you might not have to pay for your power bill anymore. In a Type 1 civilization, energy would be as essential as air. One strategy would be for us to turn natural disasters into something positive. For example, we can use tsunamis to make electricity. We could rely less on construction work and use earthquakes to help us change the land. By controlling the planet's energy sources, we could also control the weather. For instance, if a certain place would be experiencing a drought, we could just send rain clouds to bring it back to life. If we become a Type 1 civilization, we might be able to balance the amount of carbon in the atmosphere and end up controlling our planet's temperature. This means that natural disasters will become easier to predict and less damaging. Additionally, we might even be able to live in places we never thought possible, like underwater, on top of mountains where it's freezing, or in the desert. So how close are we to this level upgrade? A recent study looked at the different ways we get energy, like from fossil fuels and renewable sources. Problem is that each way of getting energy has its limitations. For some, we have limited materials. For others, at least for the time being, the costs are too high. So the team behind this study took a careful approach to make precise calculations. They found that we can reach a high energy level, but it won't happen until the year 2371. This study shows just one way we can become an advanced civilization, but it's also possible that we'll get there in a completely different way. Also, let's not forget, the first rule in becoming an advanced technology is to not become extinct. I know that sounds a bit redundant, but in our quest to harness all the energy this planet has to offer, we also need to protect it to the best of our abilities. Until we manage to travel to the edges of the universe, Earth is still the only place we call home.
So how alone are we in our galaxy? Crickets. Yep, we're mostly alone out here. But are there other civilizations lurking somewhere out there in the depths of the Milky Way? Could they possibly have evil intentions and be a threat to us? Hey, like we need more threats. Well, hey, let's have some fun with this. Some theorists reviewed humans' history and past actions toward one another. No miscongeniality awards there. And assuming they were somehow like us, used this to calculate the probability of space invaders. They determined that there could be 4 evil civilizations in our galaxy. The 4 could be eager for intergalactic domination, or maybe just for a good game of dominoes. They could be highly advanced in technology, or they've only just invented an evil version of game consoles. To understand how advanced these cultures could be and what to expect, there is a way to define their threat levels. A method called the Kardashev scale analyzes intergalactic nations' possible abilities. With 3 different levels, it reviews the amount of energy a civilization could take from their star, indicating their tech level. This only includes those that have reached interstellar communication. So any other beings out there using, let's say, space pigeons will of course be excluded. Type 1 shows that they can harness the energy from the sun, but only from what is received within their own planet, like solar power panels. Type 2 is where they can use the energy directly from the sun, like through a Dyson sphere. It's used to harness all of the sun's energy, having been built entirely around it. And lastly, Type 3, where civilization can use all elements provided by the galaxy, with the power to not only harness the energy from stars, but also black holes, even the central supermassive one. These levels are important to assess how advanced civilizations could be out there. The Milky Way is estimated to be around 13.6 billion years old. Modern humans have only been around for the last 200,000 years, and we're only a type 1. It's scary to imagine the time other beings have had to develop. We're considered a bit of a late bloomer in comparison. Earth is, shall we say, late to the party because we're located on the outer arms of the galaxy. Mathematicians posit that more centralized star systems have had more time to progress. Now, with that in mind, how common would other intelligent beings be in the galaxy? With all the life-ending events Earth has survived, it's a miracle to have a planet like ours, and that we would be unique. Or are we? Well, there are 100 trillion stars in our galaxy, and there are up to 200 billion planets, with an estimated 300,000 exoplanets capable of sustaining the kind of life we know about. From those habitable planets, how could we tell which ones have other beings eager to send us an email? No one's had the time to individually count, of course. The Drake equation can give us some rough numbers if we take averages of a few key factors. It breaks down the criteria of how many planets with life are intelligent enough to make communication. The numbers are huge, considering how many stars might have planets. And from there, we distill it down further to those within the habitable zone in the solar system. This zone is called the Goldilocks zone, as it's not too far from the sun and not too close to it. It's just right. We reduce the numbers even further by calculating which of those habitable planets will then be able to support life. And from those random places, the equation takes the probability of how many intelligent beings will be and if they are intelligent enough to communicate. The criteria is complicated, and so it's not an easy equation to explain. But from its estimate, there could be up to 100 million planets with intelligent civilizations. But just like with Earth history or struggles, these civilizations may also have their own challenges. World-ending events should be thrown into the equation, like asteroids, solar flares, supervolcanoes, and supernova. They could also destroy themselves through technology, like AI dominance or nanotech, or by affecting their own ecosystems and running out of resources, or by just acting stupidly. If we take these into the equation, the remaining living civilizations could be around 15,000. But what could they possibly want from humans? We do have an abundance of rare earth materials that could be of value, ready to be harvested and easily collected. Besides an appealing vast amount of water they could suck dry, hydrogen is a required element of rocket fuels, though these things aren't exactly rare in the galaxy and could be harvested easier from other closer solar systems or asteroids. Our technology might be intriguing to them. Our range of innovations on Earth, invented while being isolated in separate countries, help provide different technology paths around the world. Other civilizations could have followed a completely different route, and didn't learn the importance of many things we have here on Earth, like karaoke. The same goes for applied sciences, where they may have evolved in different atmospheres with different elements. Their science would be mainly affected by that, and ours would provide them with more knowledge. Then, there's one of the rarest things in the galaxy, that Earth can support life. This would be very useful for an intergalactic traveler, rather than going through the long process of terraforming an unlivable planet. Why not just take it? With a cozy outpost, it would be a lovely little holiday destination when they need some time off from conquering other civilizations. Fortunately, they wouldn't be interested in eating us, or probably wouldn't have an appetite for anything on Earth. They would need to have similar biochemistry and require the same enzymes to process the molecules we're built from. Whew! But the most likely thing they would want is to remove any competition. The biggest threat to them is anything that would provide a challenge to their domination. But before you get too frightened by these evil civilizations, this was based on human behavior. It's possible that any beings out there could lack or avoid many of our human emotions. For instance, their capacity for anger might be limited, or they could have evolved without it. They could come from a world with a history so different from ours that they could be overly trusting, making us the bad guys. But again, they may also lack empathy and other positive traits we have. Well, let's hope they only have our nice traits. Luckily, there's a big thing that separates us from everything else. The galaxy is huge, and it takes a very long time to go anywhere, even to our closest solar systems. The fastest thing we've sent into space is the Galileo probe, which travels up to 100,000 miles per hour. Even so, it would take 72,000 years to reach the closest star system, Alpha Centauri. Still, with a newly proposed laser-guided probe that could travel at 1/5 the speed of light, it would yet take up to 20 years to make that journey. On a larger scale, the Milky Way is over 105,700 light-years across. If a civilization was even capable of light speed, it would take them hundreds of thousands of years to travel from one end to the other. With a huge distance between the small number of civilizations, the only successful contact would be through advanced interstellar travel. But to achieve such a long journey, the greater the mass to be accelerated, the more energy is required, so it's not likely anything too large will be sent. But they could travel here very quickly in a small shuttle, using the ability to break cosmic speed laws. They may already be here, watching us closely, or just binge-watching Netflix. They would need very advanced technology, and the number of species obtaining this is theorized to be only 2 out of the 15,000. That means there's a 0.01% chance of evil civilizations capable of visiting us soon. If they do know we're here, and they want something from us, it's likely to take them thousands, if not millions of years to arrive. So, we've got plenty of time to relax. Time for more bright side.
Dozens of spacecraft and hundreds of probes take off from Earth and head for our planet's twin sister, Venus. It's about the same size as the Earth and has around 80% of our planet's mass. The temperatures here are too high for humans, and it doesn't have the air we're used to breathing. But we went there because scientists recently found traces of phosphine gas, which suggests that life might be there. Phosphine comes from various microbes and bacteria, so humanity goes on this journey to discover this life. With our technology, a flight to Venus would take 3.5 to 6.5 months, but we finally made it. Spaceships are landing on the planet, and when the first humans come to the surface, they see heat-scorched deserts, lava lakes, and geysers of poisonous acid. And that's it. Scientists miscalculated the radio telescope data. Phosphine never existed on Venus. So we're going back to the rockets, and we're getting ready for a longer trip across our galaxy. The scientists believe that there's at least 36 civilizations in the Milky Way that are similar to ours. They could be living organisms completely different from us. They may have different bodies, different eyes. They may walk and talk in a very different way than we do. But an advanced civilization has several criteria: technological progress and the use of developed communication between individuals. So, these civilizations must explore space, build cities, and be able to communicate with each other as independent species. Let's look at our galaxy and find these civilized worlds. So, the Milky Way is a spiral of 100,000 light-years from side to side. If a star is born at one end of it in a super powerful blast, the light from that event won't even reach the other end until 100,000 years later. There's about 100 billion stars, and near each of them, there may be worlds similar to our solar system. Let's try to find these habitable worlds using giant sieves. First, we look for stars that have a lot of iron. Such stars burn at the perfect temperature for the development of life. And the iron in the star system will help form the cores of planets that will be home to another civilization. We sift the Milky Way through our sieve. We see that there are too many stars that fit the description, so we need another filter. Now let's find stars that look like the Sun in this pile. The star must be about 100 times larger than the Earth and 333,000 times heavier. An important criterion is the age of the star. When a star gets old, it begins to expand and turns into a red giant. At this time, it can absorb the planets around it. The life of such a star can end with a huge blast that destroys everything around it, so the star we're looking for must be relatively young. Let's use our sieve again. There's fewer stars, but still that's a lot. Now let's focus on the planets. They should be in the habitable zone of the star. Not too close to a star because then the temperature would be too high for life to be born, and not too far away. Then the planet would just be an ice block with nothing living on it. The temperature of the planet must allow the water to remain liquid. Another filter is the age of the candidate planet. It takes time for an advanced civilization to develop. Based on the experience of Earth, scientists believe that it takes at least 4.5 billion years for any life form to evolve to the human level. So we're looking for planets similar to Earth or older. We use our sieve one last time, and voila! We have 36 worlds where an advanced civilization is possible. Scientists conducted this study and published it in April 2020, based on these very criteria. All that's left is to discover these civilizations and make the first contact. We can detect such a civilization by using radio waves that come from it. Suppose there's a planet A with primitive living organisms on it. Millions of years of evolution, and they'll become a civilization with advanced technology. Radio waves will be the way they communicate. Then the whole planet will emit radio waves like a star emits light. And here on Earth, we'll be able to pick up this signal with antennas pointed into space. But there's a problem with the distance between the planets. For example, planet A is 1,000 light-years away from the Earth. When planet A starts emitting radio waves, these signals won't reach us until 10 centuries later. We learned to emit and receive radio waves in 1895. And if the civilization on planet A emitted a radio signal at the same time, we won't be able to pick up that signal until 2895. It'll be the same on planet A. We sent a message in the form of a radio signal into space in 1974. In this signal, we encoded our number system, human DNA, and information about our solar system. If there's an advanced civilization on planet A, they'll be able to receive this signal only in 2974, and we'd have to wait another millennium to get a response from them. Another problem with radio waves is that they don't look like a constant glow on the planet, but like a flare. Radio waves are only used at a certain stage of civilization. At first, it's the primary method of communication, but then we begin to use cell phones, cable TV, and fiber optics. And as technology advances further, our radio wave light begins to fade out. So we only have about 100 years of active radio use by civilization to find it. One day we caught a strange radio signal of an unknown origin. Its characteristics suggested that the signal was created artificially, perhaps by an outer space civilization or a passing starship. Further searches for this signal given no results, and this gave rise to many theories and arguments as to what it really was. It could have been a signal from Earth that reflected off a satellite flying through the sky, or it could have been the traces of a comet a few light years away. But let's assume it was a civilization from outer space, one of those 36 that probably exist. Now we need to make contact with them. So we throw our luggage into a rocket and head out in the direction of our suspected planet. Our rockets can fly at 17,600 miles per hour. That means a rocket could cross the entire United States in just 8 minutes. But even if an advanced civilization lived near our closest star, Proxima Centauri, it would take us about 73,000 years to get there. Even at the speed of light, it would take 4.2 years. So we need to solve the problem of space travel. Our scientists plan to reach about a quarter of the speed of light with a laser. A powerful laser beam from Earth will push a microscopic probe in the right direction. This probe could reach our destination in about 17 years. And in another 4 years, when the signal from it reaches Earth, we'll know if there's an advanced civilization. Another possibility for faster-than-light travel is the warp bubble spacecraft. The spacecraft would have to compress space in front of it and stretch it behind its tail. Then we'll be able to reach any point in the universe in literally a few seconds. But such travel remains a fantasy for us. Perhaps we can get to different corners of the universe through wormholes. They're shortcuts similar to tunnels, but there's one problem. These wormholes might be inside black holes. They're the most mysterious objects in the universe. They're so heavy that even light can't escape their trap. Our spaceships wouldn't stand the tension either. There's also a theory that Earth is unique because it was born under completely accidental circumstances. 4.5 billion years ago, our planet was a block of lava that began to cool and solidify. But its tranquility was broken by an asteroid the size of an entire planet flying by. The collision occurred at such an angle that the Earth was not completely destroyed, but part of the asteroid remained in our orbit. A heavy rock near our planet stabilized Earth's rotation, and the gravitational interaction with the giant debris caused our core to heat up. In addition, the asteroid brought a lot of water to Earth. Such a collision is extremely unlikely. It's like winning the lottery. many times in a row. But so far, we have no reason to believe life in outer space exists. Just as we have no reason to believe that there's no advanced civilizations in the universe, except for ours.
Before we get into the reason why and how there are pyramids all around the world, let's talk about some of the examples. I'll start with the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. These folks really knew how to build a city. Their well-planned urban center spanned over 7 square miles and boasted several pyramids. But the Pyramid of the Sun is the most impressive. This giant pyramid was built way back in 100 CE and is one of the biggest structures of its kind in the whole Western Hemisphere. It's so big that it's 216 feet high above the ground. If you ever find yourself in this ancient city, you won't be able to miss the Pyramid of the Sun. It's right there on the east side of the Avenue of the Dead, the city's main north-south street. To build this incredible pyramid, around 1 million cubic yards of material were used, including a special kind of red volcanic rock called hued tezontle. Impressive, huh? We don't know too much about the people who built the Pyramid of the Sun or its purpose. But archaeologists believe there was once a temple on top of it. When explorers went below the pyramid in the 1970s, they found a bunch of cool tunnels and chambers. In 2011, they even found a secret stash of clay pots, obsidian pieces, animal bones, human figurines, and a mask. Who knows what other secrets the pyramid is hiding? If you decide to see this one, you must climb the pyramid using the 248 uneven steps on the west side. Watch your step. Sudan got some pyramids too. Nubian pyramids aren't as big as the ones in Egypt, but they still got around 200 of them. These ancient pyramids have been home to the tombs of the pharaohs of the Meroitic Kingdom for almost 1,000 years, who ruled Egypt from Nubia to the Mediterranean Sea. The pyramids at Meroe were constructed using granite and reddish sandstone. Oh, and did you know that Sudan has more ancient pyramids than Egypt? The Kushite pyramids depict the indigenous architecture and burial traditions of Nubia's Napata and Meroe kingdoms, which ancient Egypt influenced. Meroe, the burial site of over 40 queens and kings, is the most extensive Nubian pyramid site. The tomb walls depict mummified royals bedecked in jewelry, their wooden caskets containing bows, quivers of arrows, and other artifacts pointing to the Meroitic relationship and trade with Egyptian and Greek civilizations. So if you're looking for some ancient tombs to explore, you may consider skipping the crowds in Egypt and heading on down to Sudan. Let's fly to Iraq to see some more pyramids. Ziggurats have fancy receding layers and tiered temples. Instead of a smooth exterior, it has tiers like a cake. Perfect for all the important work and rituals that went on inside. You can find these towering structures scattered throughout Iraq and Iran, and they're a real testament to the power and skills of the people who built them. One of the biggest and most impressive ziggurats is the ziggurat at Ur. It's basically a giant rectangular pyramid that stands a whopping 70 to 100 feet tall, with 3 levels of terraces and a temple on top. Can you imagine how many baked bricks it took to build that thing? Try 720,000 for just the lower portion. This particular ziggurat was built for Sumerian king Ur-Nammu. Similar to other ones, this pyramid has been around for thousands of years, so it got a little rough around the edges. Thankfully, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II and some archaeologists came to the rescue in the 6th and 20th centuries respectively, and now you can find this near Talil Air Base. The ziggurat at Ur was built in 2100 BCE by King Ur-Nammu for the moon deity Nana. It was the tallest building in the city, and you could see it from miles around. It was like the medieval cathedral spire of its day. People would come here to bring their agricultural surplus and get their food allotments and seek spiritual nourishment. Sadly, the Nana temple at the top of the ziggurat didn't survive, but we do have some blue glazed bricks that may have been part of its decoration. The lower parts of the ziggurat are pretty amazing though. The architects even included holes in the temple's baked exterior to let the water evaporate from its core. Since we explored some of the pyramids on our planet, let's take a broader perspective. They can be found in many parts of the world. Egypt has over 100 pyramids, double that number in Sudan, and dozens of others are scattered in the Middle East and China. The Americas have the most pyramids in total, with more pyramids than the rest of the world combined. These pyramids are located in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Time to know more about the evolution of pyramids through history. The oldest pyramid is in Egypt. This pyramid was a step pyramid, which was created by placing one layer of stone on top of another. The pharaoh Sneferu is credited with creating the pyramid shape we recognize today. During his 45-year reign, he built 3 pyramids. His first 2 attempts failed, but he finally got it right with the Red Pyramid, which is considered the first true pyramid. It was Sneferu's son, Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was the tallest human-made structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. Latin American pyramids are similar to early Egyptian step pyramids, but they were built independently with no knowledge of each other. The pyramids in Sudan were built around 700 BCE and are tall but much narrower than those in Egypt. How in the world did all these civilizations build these things without even texting each other? After all, the Aztecs, Mayans, and ancient Egyptians were about as different as possible. But despite their cultural differences, they all seem to agree on one thing. Pyramids were pretty cool. Step pyramids are all around the world because they were the most feasible and stable way to build large and tall structures without access to lighter building materials like wood and metal. The triangular form with a square base is the best way to build a sturdy structure, and having a cube structure would require more material for less height. Now, when it comes to pyramid design, the Egyptian pyramids were like giant triangles with a square base, smooth sides, and a pointy top. On the other hand, the Aztecs and Mayans went for a tiered cake look, with steps leading up to a flat platform on top. So, while all these pyramids share the same basic shape, they have their own unique flair. Each group built its pyramids using different materials, techniques, and slope angles. So while they may have been inspired by each other's work occasionally, they were just doing their own thing. Egyptian pyramids had smooth, angled sides that were designed to help the pharaoh's soul ascend to heaven. The Pyramid of the Sun was built over a series of caves that served as a passageway for the deities. The Maya built the temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza to honor the deity Kukulkan, usually represented by a serpent. Nicknamed El Castillo, it has 91 steps on each side, plus a platform. That's 365 steps, one for each day of the Mayan calendar. Tell me, Brightsiders, how were pyramids built? To begin with, humans made them, not a foreign race from space that landed on Earth. You see, one thing that all pyramids have in common is that they were built without advanced tools or even the wheel. It took a lot of people to build them, including skilled laborers and architects. For example, it's estimated that 20,000 people built the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it's believed that most of them were skilled laborers. Building pyramids was a massive undertaking that required years of planning and effort. The Great Pyramid at Cholula, Mexico, took 600 years to complete.
Did you know that humans are real space people? You were born in space. Heck, even I was born in space. We were all born in space. But for humans to be here on Earth, so many conditions have to be precisely correct that it's highly improbable that we even exist. But we do. First, we, and any other space creatures who might be out there, have to live on a planet orbiting a yellowish white star, not a red star or a blue star. Not a blue star, because they burn out too quickly. In a few million years, there wouldn't be time for evolution to do its relatively slow magic and produce intelligent beings. Blue stars also tend to swell up and turn red. When they collapse and explode, it makes it highly unlikely that any civilization could prosper near a blue star. Red stars, which are by far the most numerous kind of stars, don't seem like good prospects for intelligent civilizations to orbit around either. Red stars are so cold and so dim that a planet that could grow a civilization must orbit very closely to the red star, which would expose the planet to intense, deadly X-ray radiation. So, though red stars are the most numerous and appear to have many planets orbiting them, red stars are a no-go for hosting intelligent, civilized life like our own. That leaves the yellowish stars, about 10% of all stars. However, an important fact must be met before considering the possibility of intelligent life living around a yellowish star. That fact is that the yellow star must be a third-generation star. Only third-generation stars will contain sufficient chemical diversity to sustain advanced life forms. Each time a star explodes, heavier, more complicated elements are created. The explosion expelled these elements and eventually found their way into a nebula. Gravity within the nebula will gradually form the next generation of stars, and so on. Our bodies need calcium for our skeletons and teeth. Our brains need zinc to help create the electrochemical signals that make us move, feel, and think. Our blood needs iron. Therefore, our bodies need to have formed around a third-generation star, and a yellow one. Amazingly, Earth has all the different elements in the universe, all 94 naturally occurring ones, from hydrogen to plutonium. Maybe that's why we're here. And we have to thank our third-generation yellow dwarf sun for that. Why yellow? Because yellow stars burn very steadily by nuclear fusion without significantly changing brightness over billions of years. If our sun became just 6% brighter or dimmer, Earth would become too hot or too cold to sustain civilized life. Fortunately, Earth is in the habitable zone around the sun. The habitable zone is where liquid water can exist on a planet. But that brings us to the second condition necessary for intelligent life to live in space: the planet itself. Recent studies with the Kepler telescope have shown that 1/4 of all yellow dwarf stars may contain Earth-like planets in the habitable zone around yellow dwarf stars. That figure is somewhat debatable. It might be as few as 1 out of every 33 yellow dwarf stars, but that's still a lot of planets orbiting yellow stars in habitable zones. So let's consider the second essential component for intelligent life in space: the planet itself. The planet that would bear intelligent civilization must have many particular characteristics that aren't easy to come by individually, and even more rare to find in combination. Most importantly, the planet must have protection against the star it's orbiting. Because stars shine by nuclear fusion in their cores, gas in the outer shell of the sun, called the corona, gets blown off into space in what's called the solar wind. Our United States satellites take constant readings of the force of the solar wind, which is mainly electrified, ionized, hydrogen nuclei, along with a smattering of atomic nuclei from the many other elements found in the sun. It's not the atmosphere that protects Earth, it's the magnetosphere that stops or deflects the dangerous solar wind, causing aurorae when the solar wind is attracted to Earth's magnetic poles and electrifies the air of the upper atmosphere like a fluorescent bulb. Without a magnetosphere surrounding it, any planet, even those in habitable zones, would be toasted by a constant rain of ionized hydrogen nuclei from its star. A planet with life on it must have a magnetosphere strong enough to deflect the solar wind. Not every planet in our solar system has a magnetosphere. The gas giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, have magnetospheres, but gas planets cannot have civilizations. Of the solid worlds, only Earth and Mercury have magnetospheres, and Mercury is too weak to stop the solar wind because of its closeness to the sun. Another protective shield that keeps the Earth safe from the sun is its atmosphere. The atmosphere is about 300 miles thick, with most of it concentrated within just 10 miles of the Earth's surface. The atmosphere protects life on Earth from both the sun's ultraviolet (UV) radiation and X-rays. The gas, ozone, which is 3 oxygen atoms bound into a large gas molecule in the upper atmosphere, blocks most of the sun's UV radiation from reaching the ground. The planet Mars, whose atmosphere is 1,000 times thinner than the Earth's, has no ozone, and the sun's ultraviolet emissions have totally irradiated its surface. A planet must be able to stop the UV radiation from its star, so the specific composition of the atmosphere is critical for any planet to have an intelligent civilization. We've got it, but it is a rare and precarious mix. The planet must have some part of its surface solid to walk and work on. The planet must have a crust. It's pure science fiction to consider underwater civilizations or floating civilizations in the atmospheres of other planets. A planet's crust must have tectonic plates that move. This movement of tectonic plates creates the subduction of the crust. Subduction is when one tectonic plate slides under or over another, bringing the fresh matter to the surface. This renewal of the chemical properties of the planet prevents chemical equilibrium, where nothing is reactive. Earthquakes and volcanoes also contribute to the process of geochemical renewal. That's right, earthquakes and volcanoes are good. Subduction of tectonic plates, then, is another planetary essential for life. Mars doesn't have tectonic plate activity. Neither does Venus nor Mercury. Mercury is one big tectonic plate, but there's no ongoing plate activity other than slight shrinkage. One big reason these planets have no life is that there's no geochemical reactivity because there's no tectonic subduction. And that brings us to the Moon. Yes, the Moon. To say that the Moon keeps us alive may seem like a stretch, but the contribution of the Moon to life on Earth is essential. First, the gravity of the Moon as it moves through space with the Earth not only makes the ocean tides ebb and flow, it also helps the rotation of the Earth to churn or stir the magma inside the Earth. The motion of the magma inside the Earth, with its high metallic content, contributes to the creation of the Earth's magnetosphere. So, the Moon keeps us safe in space by helping Earth become a geodynamo and creating our magnetism. The Moon is the largest moon in the solar system compared to the size of the planet it orbits. Essentially, it's primary. Many people consider the Earth-Moon system to be a double planet, but that's another issue. Another thing the Moon does that keeps life safe on Earth is to hold the Earth steady. Because the Moon is gravitationally locked to the Earth, the Moon acts much like a balance pole does for a tightrope walker. Therefore, the Earth doesn't wobble very much compared to other planets. This wobble is called libration. If the Earth wobbled as much as Mars or Saturn, not only would our weather become chaotic, but farming might have been impossible. These rare or unique astronomical circumstances work together to make Earth habitable for humanity. Many other factors are not astronomical, such as evolutionary, biological, and chemical factors required for life to exist on Earth. The probabilities, or improbabilities, are multiplying. Taken all together, we are very, very lucky to be here. In fact, we're so lucky that we may have hit the jackpot. Considering all the possibilities, it's doubtful that anywhere else in the universe is as fortunate as Earth.
Now, have you ever seen cricket balls that are 3 billion years old? Klerksdorp spheres were found in deposits of the mineral pyrophyllite in South Africa and rock the science world. They do look like tiny ancient cricket balls with seams-like lines around the middle. Back in the 1980s, some folks claimed these spheres had been made by an advanced pre-flood civilization we know nothing about. One museum curator shared stories about how they rotated on their own in a display case. There was also a TV show that invited a psychic who declared the spheres were pieces of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these spheres are actually pretty common concretions or spherical objects formed by different minerals than the surrounding rock. The seam-like lines are just imprints from the host rock's layers building up over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from noticeably flattened spheres to distinct disks. As for that episode when one of these spheres spun on its own, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum cleared that up too. He said that when he put one sphere on its glass shelf when a journalist came to visit, the sphere naturally rotated a bit because it's round. The area where the museum is located often experiences earth tremors from gold mining activities nearby. The oldest known human-like footprints could be 6 million years old. They were found on the Greek island of Crete in 2002. If the number is correct, it would mean that early human ancestors may have migrated between Europe and Africa much earlier than we previously thought. This doesn't mean Africa is not the cradle of humankind, though. It could just prove that early human ancestors moved back and forth between continents. Some researchers believe the footprints were left by a bipedal creature possibly related to an early human ancestor nicknamed El Greco. According to scientists who studied them, the footprints have a very human-like shape, with 5 toes and a parallel big toe. Some scientists are skeptical about it and suggest the prints might be from a late European ape. The new study analyzed fossilized marine microorganisms found in the sedimentary rocks to determine the footprint's age and prove it's actually 6 million years. The next amazing find that keeps scientists entertained is the Dorchester plot. It's a beautifully crafted metal vessel with some fancy geometric designs embossed in shiny silver. The pot was discovered in, who could have thought, Dorchester in 1852 under quite unusual circumstances. During a powerful blast, the pot broke into 2 pieces. Scientists believe it was originally embedded within a rock or boulder known as pudding stone. The rock from which the Dorchester pot emerged is dated to be around 500 million years old. So it could mean the pot itself is also that old. The current and less exciting theory suggests that the Dorchester pot is a Victorian-era candlestick holder. Such things were really trending back then, so it's not a surprise to find such fancy household item from that time. The Dorchester pot falls into the category of ooparts, or out-of-place artifacts. Those are objects that seem too advanced for the time period they're supposedly from. If we accept that the pot is 500 million years old, then whoever made it was way ahead of their times in terms of crafts and tech. One extra mystery is that the pot has an engraving of a plant that most likely disappeared from Earth over 100,000 years ago. Sounds like good proof the pot is really extra old. Now, it looks like the oldest map in Europe is a stone from 4,000 years ago. This Bronze Age slab was found in France in the year 1900 at an ancient burial ground. The carvings on the slab show in 3 dimensions the River Odie network with a fantastic accuracy of around 80% over an 18-mile stretch. There are other stone-carved maps around the world, but this one is unique because it shows a specific area to scale. Looks like the slab's carvings don't just map rivers and hills, but also settlements, barrow sites, and field systems. Archaeologists say the slab wasn't used for navigation, but rather to symbolize power. The detailed markings on the slab might have served to illustrate the domain of a local ruler, possibly a prince or king, to show their control over the territory. When the ruler lost power, the slab was likely repurposed as part of a burial vault. The unique artifact was stored in the cellar of a museum. For decades, no one even noticed until several scholars read older reports about the slab and decided to check it out. They conducted a detailed analysis using 3D techniques. Their research proved that the creators of the slab had not only etched lines into the rock, but also modified its surface to reflect the topography of the landscape with high accuracy. The Salzburg cube, also known as the Wolf's Egg iron, was discovered in the late 19th century in Austria. Now, don't let the name mislead you. It doesn't look like a cube at all. It's more like a rounded object with 2 flat sides. Down the middle, there's a groove, and the surface is covered with pits and craters. This unique appearance is the reason why many people think it might be something out of this world. Workers accidentally found this artifact when they blew apart a piece of coal. The coal seam it came from is thought to be over 60 million years old. The Salzburg cube moved between museums, mysteriously vanished in the early 20th century, and then showed up again. A professor from Bonn University suggested it might be from a meteor, but they found no evidence of elements that you'd normally see in meteorites, like cobalt or nickel. Then researchers thought it must be a human-made object, possibly a Victorian-era candlestick holder. No one knows the true story of the cube or its current location. Yep, it disappeared again. Have you heard about the Meister print? It's a fossilized sandal print discovered in 1968, and it has sparked a lot of intrigue. There's a trilobite inside the print, which supposedly went extinct around 500 million years before humans even existed. But many historians think this age is an exaggeration. When Meister found the fossil, it was authenticated. But the scientist who did it didn't confirm it was a human sandal print. He only agreed there was a trilobite there. When another scientist visited the site, he found a 6-inch impression he believed was from a child's moccasin. But the footwear seemed to be new. So, could it be evidence of time travel? Proof that humans existed millions of years earlier than we thought? Or a sign that someone else visited early Earth? Or is it just a rock formation that looks like a sandal print? We still don't have the answers. Back in June 1936, a couple was walking along Red Creek in London, Texas. London, Texas? Yeah, when they stumbled upon something unusual. It was a piece of wood sticking out of what seemed to be an ancient rock formation. About 10 years later, their curious son decided to crack open the rock to see what was inside. And he saw a hammer, which looked surprisingly modern. Then, one unique finds enthusiast decided that the rock encasing the hammer was from the Cretaceous period. This would mean that someone dropped a 19th century hammer while dinosaurs like Triceratops were still roaming the Earth. So, if this hammer was truly from the Cretaceous period, then the whole evolutionary theory would be wrong. And if the hammer was modern, it would mean the Cretaceous rock formation it came from was much younger than we thought. But the real answer was much simpler. The hammer was indeed modern, and geological processes had encased it in rock. Minerals can harden around an object in a relatively short time. So the hammer was probably dropped by a miner a century or so ago, and the rock formed around it afterwards. And no, it wasn't a Victorian-era candlestick holder either.
Saturn's iconic rings will disappear in less than 2 years. Soon, we won't be able to see Jupiter's Great Red Spot. Pluto's atmosphere might vanish any day now. Even the universe itself could be slowly evaporating right at this moment. But let me start from the very beginning. Saturn's rings won't vanish forever, at least in the near future, but they will seemingly disappear from view. This phenomenon is caused by the planet's tilt as it orbits the Sun. As a result, the eye-catching rings adorning the gas giant will get invisible to stargazers in 2025. This outrageous disappearance occurs because Saturn's thin rings turn edge-on. It's like holding a sheet of paper horizontally at eye level parallel to the ground so that only the edge of the paper can be seen. Something similar happens to the gas giant's rings. As the seasons on the planet progress, instead of the southern side of the rings tilted our way, we start seeing the northern side. But then the planet tilts again, revealing the southern side once again. Such a ring plane crossing happens every 15 years when our planet passes through the gas giant's ring plane. The last time this phenomenon occurred was in 2009. Afterward, the rings gradually became visible again over the course of several months. This time, the rings will be on edge in March 2025. Then they will slowly come back into view and disappear again in November of the same year. Soon after that, the rings will reappear, first becoming visible to the largest telescopes, later for everyone else to see. At the same time, further into the future, the rings might cease to exist for good. Astronomers have concluded that Saturn's rings, which mostly consist of ice and rocky dust from smashed asteroids, are younger than we thought. They're losing tons and tons of mass per second all the time, and it's likely to be a few 100 million years at most before they vanish completely. Let's move to the Great Red Spot on Jupiter. This immense raging storm might stop spinning in the next 20 years. The storm in question is larger than our planet. It was first spotted in 1830, but observations from the 1600s mention the presence of a giant spot on Jupiter too. If it was the same Great Red Spot, then we can say that the storm has been raging for centuries. The storm's vortex has remained so powerful thanks to Jupiter's 300 to 400 mile-per-hour jet streams. But like any other storm, the Great Red can't keep raging forever. It's been shrinking for a long time. In a decade or two, it's predicted to turn into GRC, the Great Red Circle, and who knows, maybe it will later turn into the GRM, the Great Red Memory. In the late 1800s, the storm was more than 35,000 miles across, 4 times the diameter of Earth. But when Voyager 2 flew past Jupiter in 1979, the storm had already shrunk almost twice its original size. And this shrinking is still happening. In 2017, the GRS spanned the width of a bit more than 10,150 miles, less than 1.3 times the diameter of Earth. Moving on, Pluto's atmosphere is going through a weird transformation. This icy dwarf planet sitting over 3 billion miles away from Earth in the region of the Kuiper Belt drew astronomers' attention in 2018 when it passed in front of a star. With such a powerful source of light illuminating Pluto, researchers managed to examine the dwarf planet and its atmosphere. They came to a shocking conclusion that Pluto's atmosphere is refreezing back onto its surface as the dwarf planet gets colder and colder. Astronomers used several telescopes in different spots in the USA and Mexico to observe Pluto and its thin atmosphere, which is mainly made of nitrogen. This atmosphere is supported by the vapor pressure of ice on the surface of the dwarf planet. For around 25 years, Pluto has been moving further away from the Sun, and its surface temperature has been gradually going down. Pluto is really far from our star at the moment, but at one point it will start getting closer in other regions of its incredibly huge orbit. Besides Jupiter's Great Red Spot, Saturn's rings, and Pluto's atmosphere, we're also losing stars. But stars don't vanish, right? For thousands of years, scientists believed that lights in the sky were fixed and unchanging. Even after they realized those lights were physical objects, just like the sun, they were still sure that stars went through major changes extremely slowly, on timescales of millions and billions of years. In reality, though, the most massive stars, which can be hundreds of times heavier than the sun, can go through sudden catastrophic events. For example, once they reach the ends of their lives, they pass away in blinding explosions of supernovae, shining for months on end and visible across hundreds of millions of light years. But there are stars that seem to just wink out of visibility. It should be impossible. And over the past years, a group of researchers tried to figure out whether there's actually a chance of such a phenomenon happening. They started to compare data collected over decades of observations. The project is called VASCO, the Vanishing and Appearing Sources During a Century of Observations. The scientists are interested in all kinds of disappearing objects, but they're hoping to find a star that was steady and present for a long time, and then just vanished without a trace. Even if you point a super powerful telescope there, you'll still see nothing. Our current understanding of space and its laws suggest that stars change very slowly over long periods of time. Dramatic disappearances are supposed to leave noticeable traces behind. Of course, it doesn't mean that all stars should shine steadily. The sky is filled with stars that change in brightness and pulsate. But VASCO is about something very different. They want to find something that goes from a completely steady star to vanishing entirely. Such a phenomenon hasn't been documented yet, and such a discovery might lead to new physics. And now, let's move on to the most disturbing part, the one about the evaporating universe. According to a famous theory proposed by Stephen Hawking, black holes, the densest objects in the universe, evaporate over time. They lose mass in the form of bizarre radiation. But a new study claims that Hawking radiation, or something very similar to it, might not be limited to black holes. It's likely to be everywhere, and it could mean that the universe is slowly but surely evaporating right in front of our eyes. Now, Hawking radiation is something no one has ever observed, but theories and experiments suggest that it can actually exist. Let's see how it works. There's a misconception that black holes are cosmic hoovers, slurping up everything that comes too close with the help of their immense gravitational pull. In reality, though, black holes don't have more gravity than any other body of a similar mass. What they're famous for is their density, incredible amounts of mass packed into a tiny, tiny space. Within a certain proximity to such a dense object, gravitational pull becomes so powerful that it becomes impossible to escape. Not even the speed of light in a vacuum is enough, and that's the fastest known thing in the universe. At the same time, anything massive or dense enough can produce a serious curvature of space-time. In simple words, the immense gravitational field of these objects makes space-time wrap around them. Even though black holes are the most extreme example, space-time also curves around other super-dense objects, like white dwarfs, and neutron stars or galaxy clusters. It means that any super-dense and supermassive object can have some sort of radiation similar to Hawking radiation. And after a very, very long period of time, it could lead to everything in the universe evaporating, following the fate of old supermassive black holes. If it turns out to be true, it will change our understanding not only of Hawking radiation, but also our view of the universe and its and our future.
In 2017, a strange object was spotted in our solar system. It had the shape of a long tube, similar to a pancake. No known asteroid or comet we've seen looks like that. Its exterior was also peculiar. It was at least 10 times more reflective than the average stuff that flies through space, with some saying it had a surface similar to polished metal. When it went past the sun and left our reach, it accelerated faster than what our gravity could account for. At first glance, it was like this thing had a rocket strapped to its back. This unusual visitor even got a special name, Oumuamua. It comes from Hawaiian and translates to scout or visitor from a faraway land. And because of its characteristics, scientists soon began to wonder if this was at last a visit from otherworldly creatures. Before they went full-on with the science fiction suppositions, astronomers gathered the information they were sure about, starting with the fact that Oumuamua must have come from another solar system. There must have been some unfortunate event in its home system that led to its ejection. What they didn't know was that this was a comet or asteroid. They're both celestial objects orbiting a sun, but they have distinct compositions and behaviors. Comets are composed primarily of ice, dust, and rocky material, often referred to as dirty snowballs. When a comet approaches the sun, the heat causes the ice to vaporize, releasing gas and dust particles into space. This creates a bright glowing tail that can extend for millions of miles. Comets generally have elliptical orbits, often taking them from the distant reaches of our solar system closer to the sun. Asteroids, however, are mostly made of rock and metal. In our neighborhood, they are remnants of the early formation of the solar system and are typically found in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Unlike comets, asteroids do not develop tails when they approach the sun, as they have no ice. Their orbits generally follow more circular paths compared to comets. By all accounts, Oumuamua should be a comet, because it seems to come from a different location in the universe. Yet, it doesn't exhibit the typical signs of cometary activity. Oumuamua lacks a tail and does not spew out gas as it passes by, not like me. Even though it behaves like a comet, it looks more like an asteroid. Now, another big question is how scientists even managed to spot Oumuamua in the first place. Considering the vastness of space and time in the galaxy, it's remarkable. Stars have lifetimes spanning millions or billions of years, and the formation of a solar system takes hundreds of millions of years. Even the fastest objects take tens of thousands of years to travel from one star to another. In contrast, humans have only been observing the skies with telescopes for around 400 years, a tiny fraction of cosmic time. And it's only in recent decades, even years, that we've had the technology to detect and track fast-moving, dim objects. Either rocks like these are abundant, or we've been incredibly lucky with our detections, or it's simply wanted to be seen. Now, another question that was asked was where such objects could come from. It's highly unlikely that Oumuamua came from a mature, stable solar system. That's because such systems don't eject enough material to fill up the galaxy. Occasionally, a random rock might get flung out, but it can rarely travel so far. Young systems, however, act differently. In these chaotic environments, collisions, mergers, and migrations are happening everywhere. Plenty of tiny rocks roam around, perfect candidates for ejection. The solar system that kicked Oumuamua out must have had a planet similar to Jupiter. Its massive size and gravity could influence other objects in the system, causing potential ejections. But not all solar systems develop Jupiter-sized planets. Often massive planets end up close to their stars, becoming hotter versions of Jupiter. These planets, snugly orbiting a sun, are less likely to eject debris. Now, Neptune-like planets may play a role too. While not as massive as Jupiter, they tend to call the outer regions of solar systems their home. Our solar system has the Kuiper Belt, a reservoir of comets in its outer reaches. During a solar system's early stages, interactions between Neptune-like planets and debris are common. Finding Neptune-like planets in other systems has been challenging, though. Our methods for detecting exoplanets work better for massive objects close to their stars, making it difficult to spot Neptune counterparts farther out. Oumuamua was also linked to a peculiar theory about how life came to be in the universe – panspermia. Now that's a hypothesis that suggests that life exists throughout the universe and can be distributed between planets by various means, such as asteroids, comets, or even spacecraft. It says that life must have originated in one location in the universe and then spread to other celestial bodies. Fans of the panspermia theory have suggested that such interstellar objects could potentially carry tiny microbes, those building blocks of life between star systems. If such objects were to impact a planet or a moon, they could transfer these materials and seed the celestial body with life. For now, there is no evidence to support the theory that this comet in particular has transported life between star systems. After years of research, the overall consensus became that Oumuamua was indeed a comet. The reason why it moves so strangely is because it might have frozen hydrogen on its surface that reacts when touched by sunlight. The closer it got to our sun, the faster it became, releasing that hydrogen and also changing its path through our solar system. Its color also supports this theory. It's red, which might mean it's been hit by cosmic rays for a long time. The longer it was touched by those rays, the more hydrogen it gathered in the process. But since they can't be completely sure, astronomers have a plan to follow this visitor. One idea is to send a mission to check it out. It's already far away from us, but it may not be too late just yet. We may be able to send a probe fast enough to catch up with the comet. The plan was named Project Lyra and aims to use the Earth's orbit and that of Jupiter to bounce out a probe far enough to reach Oumuamua. If it works, it will be the fastest space device we've sent out in the universe. One potential trajectory of the space probe involves the gravitational pull of our planet and that of Jupiter as a lasso effect, but not Ted Lasso. The probe will leave our planet and re-enter Earth's orbit before sending it to meet with Jupiter's pull. It will be sent back near our planet a second time, where it will be ejected with enough force to reach the comet. Project Lyra also aims to follow a second faraway visitor named Borisov. This one was discovered by an amateur astronomer and now bears his name. What's interesting about it is that it's, well, spotless. Similar to our experience with Oumuamua, we haven't seen anything like Borisov before either. Studies of the light coming from its cloud of dust and gas show it's very clean compared to other space objects. After it was first noticed in August 2019, astronomers studied its path through our solar system and concluded it came from another star too. But Borisov gave us more time to study it because we spotted it earlier in its journey through our neighborhood. Researchers used advanced telescopes to look at the dust coming off Borisov. They found it's throwing off over 400 pounds of dust every second. They also found Borisov has more carbon monoxide than comets from our solar system usually do. But the amount isn't the same everywhere on the comet. This tells us the space object probably started forming near its home star before moving away, maybe because of larger planets in its system. The light from Borisov is way more polarized than light from other comets we've seen, and its cloud is super smooth. This tells us Borisov has never interacted with another star. You're one of over 8 billion people alive on Earth. Let's zoom out. Our planet is just one of 8 planets in our solar system. In the galaxy, our neighborhood is just one of almost 4,000. And from what we know so far, there are billions of galaxies in the entire universe. That itself may also be growing. It's highly unlikely that we're the only living creatures in the universe. Surely, there must be some other habitable planet. Here's where the Fermi Paradox comes in. The idea got its name from a man named Enrico Fermi. Back in the 50s, he pointed out that if other life forms were out there and had the tech to travel through space, they should have visited us by now. These days, we have better telescopes that allow scientists to discover over 5,000 planets outside our solar system. Yet, still no sign of life. Throughout the years, there have been many suggested solutions to the Fermi Paradox. These outer world beings may be just too far away for a friendly chat. We've seen it in movies, spaceships traveling between stars as easily as cars on a highway. But in reality, making a way through space is a slow and cumbersome process. Even our fastest rocket would take thousands of years to reach a nearby star. When you add in the vastness of the cosmos, it's like trying to find a living needle in the biggest cosmic haystack available. Now, we could just as easily be the very first civilization to emerge in the universe. It's a lonely thought, and it also puts a lot of pressure on us. If we're the only ones, we need to preserve life on our planet, not just for our sake, but also because if we fade away, all life fades away with us. The universe has been around for billions of years, but intelligent life like ours has only existed for a tiny fraction of that time. Maybe we're just early bloomers, waiting for someone else to catch up. To support this theory, a study was done in 2015 using the Hubble Space Telescope. And this is what it showed. Out of all the worlds that could sustain life, only 8% are as old as the Earth. The rest of them are too young and still haven't reached that point in their evolution for life to thrive. There could also be the possibility that our galactic relatives are watching us from afar. A scientist from another planet may be studying us as primitive life forms right now. He may not want to disturb us just yet, the same way we look at ants in an ant farm during science class. On that same note, maybe they're just not ready to interact with us because they've calculated a precise, perfect timing for our meetup. So they're lying dormant in a hibernation status. And they might be right to do so. Why rush into things when we've got all of eternity ahead? There's also the idea that our planet and us humans just aren't cool enough for others to play with, and won't be until we're evolved enough to be welcomed into the Galactic High School's senior class. Or perhaps life is more fragile than we believe. A 2016 study suggested that it's in the early years of a planet where life makes its way. That's when the planet is cool enough for water to form. But those conditions may not last long thanks to the greenhouse effect. So even if life has existed in the universe every now and then, it never evolved to a stage where it could have contacted us. And what if life's ultimate test comes much later? Several thinkers believe that civilizations tend to destroy themselves at some point in their technological evolution. And this may be a potential future for us, too. We're just not there yet. Maybe we'll come to build technology so smart and so powerful that it will overwhelm us, leading to our demise. Well, if it can happen to us, who's to say it didn't happen to other species in the past, on other planets? Amidst all these theories, there's one possibility that's both sobering and profound. We may truly be alone in the universe, forever. Perhaps the conditions for life are so rare that Earth is the only oasis in a vast desert of emptiness. The creepiest answer to the Fermi Paradox has a name, though, and it's called the dark forest theory. It first appeared in the 1980s. According to it, the universe is a huge version of a haunted forest, and other types of creatures are out there playing a game of hide-and-seek. It's the expanded version of the survival of the fittest. History on Earth shows that less technologically advanced groups usually end up worse off when meeting more advanced ones. The huge differences in technology often lead to a situation where attacking first seems like the best option. If there's even a small chance that cosmic neighbors might harm us, destroying them first could be our only hope. So if the galaxy is full of advanced life, it's smart for us to stay quiet and avoid contact. Other civilizations would probably reach the same conclusion. Even peaceful ones might feel forced to attack to survive. That's why some scientists criticize the idea of sending messages out there and think searching for them might be pointless. But this idea isn't new. A story from the 40s called First Contact describes humans meeting other types of civilizations for the first time. The two groups became friends, but can't risk letting each other find their home planets. They'd rather destroy each other than risk their safety. Another story, The Forge of God, talks about the danger of our signals reaching hostile species. It compares Earth's broadcasts to a baby's cries attracting wolves. It suggests that we might be in danger because of our naivete. The dark force theory was also explored in a radio play called Calls from Far Away. It shows how discovering otherworldly life on Pluto changes people's views. Some claim the news is fake, others try to understand the reality that we're not alone. But it also suggests that maybe we should focus on our own problems instead of reaching for the stars. If that doesn't sound scary, this will. We've been sending signals of our existence into the cosmos for decades now. By now, any potential civilization within 100 light-years of us might be getting our signals, and if they're advanced enough, they'll know exactly where to find us. If there's any reason why we need to hide from them, it's already too late. Galactic cousins aside, we do need to continue our research for habitable planets for a more pressing reason. Our cozy Earth won't be here forever. When our star fades, all life within the solar system will fade with it. Current estimations claim we've got about 1.3 billion years left before our planet becomes uninhabitable. It will become too hot for water to exist, and without water there is no life, at least not as we know it. So, it begs the following questions. What if there are other types of creatures out there that don't need water to exist? Our type of life needs water because it acts as a solvent. It's an environment where various chemicals can interact with each other to generate something that lives. Some new piece of research suggests that there may be a substitute for water out there in the universe – carbon dioxide. At certain temperatures and under a certain amount of pressure, it acts the same way, allowing chemicals to mingle. If that's true, then our list of known habitable planets would increase dramatically. Sure, we humans will probably never be able to survive on their surface, but other creatures may have evolved to do so. One planet that may feature these weird life conditions is closer than we think – Venus. Its atmosphere is made out of 97% carbon dioxide. It's also very hot and has enough pressure to sustain this theoretical model. So, we might be getting closer to finding a massive icy planet beyond Neptune's orbit. Sorry Pluto, still not you. Recently, some universe mapping using data from a telescope in Hawaii eliminated about 78% of the possible locations for this mysterious Waldo from space. Some people call it Planet 9, while others prefer Planet X. Either way, it's been causing controversy since its existence was first proposed. And that is mainly because no study so far can answer the big question: does it really exist? If discovered, Planet 9 would rank as the 5th largest planet in our solar system, with a mass 10 times that of Earth. It's also theorized to be gaseous, like Uranus. The initial study on Planet 9, dating back to 2016, suggests that this colossal new planet orbits the Sun 29 times farther out than Neptune, which sits at about 2.8 billion miles. As a result, the Planet 9 would take between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. If confirmed, this yet-to-be-understood world would dominate a region larger than any other known planet in our cosmic neighborhood. These are all intriguing hypotheses, but without a single piece of evidence or observation to back them up. Before dismissing this as a wild guess, it is important to note that these researchers relied on complex mathematical modeling and computer simulations to speculate about the planet's characteristics, because that's what they do. The hypothetical presence of this planet would explain various mysterious features located beyond Neptune. We are specifically talking about the Kuiper Belt, a huge donut-shaped region filled with icy debris left over from the formation of the solar system, including comets and dwarf planets like Pluto. What happens is that the 6 farthest objects in the Kuiper Belt exhibit elliptical orbits that are all oriented in a similar direction within physical space and tilted approximately 30 degrees downward relative to the orbital plane of our 8 known planets. What's strange here is that, despite their distinct orbital velocities around the solar system, they maintain this alignment. The likelihood of such alignment occurring randomly is extremely low, around 0.007%. So, here comes Planet 9, a hypothetical massive celestial body that offers a plausible explanation for this strange phenomenon, potentially exerting gravitational influence to shape these orbits. The initial theory didn't hold up for long, facing accusations of observational bias and calculation errors. Then, in 2017, another study popped up, sparking back the idea that maybe Planet 9 is out there after all. This time, Spanish astronomers tried a novel approach, focusing on observing extreme trans-Neptunian objects. These celestial bodies orbit the Sun in highly stretched elliptical paths, with average distances exceeding 13 billion miles. The research suggests that the distances between these objects' nodes and the Sun might provide clues to Planet 9's location. You see, these nodes are the points where a celestial body's orbit intersects the solar system's plane. When these objects reach these points, they're more likely to interact with other solar system bodies, potentially causing significant changes in their orbits or even collisions. So, if the trajectory of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects remains stable, everything's fine. But if it's not, well, that's a sign that something else, something big, is messing with their path. And that's exactly what the research found. There is something unseen out there, throwing these objects off course. And that something could be a planet, chilling at a distance between 300 to 400 times farther from the Sun than Earth. To this day, the study of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects is the strongest evidence we've got for Planet 9's existence. And if you're still not convinced by this theory, know that strange motions like these have led to planetary discoveries before. Neptune, for instance, was spotted because Uranus's motion didn't quite agree with the predictions of Newtonian gravity. But the deflection of its orbit could be explained if it was caused by a pull of an undiscovered planet. And just like that, we discovered Neptune. Now, the year is 2021, and there's all this buzz about Planet 9 again. After correcting some old guesses, studies are now leaning towards the idea that this mystery world follows an epic loop around the Sun every 7,000 years. That is massive news, because it means this planet might be closer than we ever thought, making it easier for our telescopes to spot it. The paper also suggests there is a whopping 99% chance that the funky orbits of these distant objects are all because of this unseen planet, not just some cosmic coincidence. Now, the odds of this whole situation being a fluke are down to a 1 in 250 chance, which is much better than the 1 in 10,000 chance back in 2016. All these optimistic numbers have brought us to where we are today, keeping our hopes and working on better equipment to continue the mission of spotting Planet 9. As mentioned earlier, researchers in Hawaii created some kind of treasure map utilizing the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System to eliminate 78% of its locations. This is great news, considering how challenging it is to find a planet-sized needle in a cosmic haystack. But unfortunately, Planet 9's presence remains a ghost in the dark outer reaches of our solar system. Enthusiasts are still convinced of its existence and believe it is only a matter of time before we celebrate the discovery of Earth's new cosmic cousin. They're putting their hopes on the Rubin Observatory, which is currently under construction in Chile and is scheduled to begin science operations in late 2025. Over the course of 10 years, this observatory will scan the entire southern hemisphere sky every few nights with a 27-foot, fast-moving telescope equipped with the largest digital camera in the world. The idea is to catalog everything in the solar system, reaching out to and beyond Neptune, and tracking the movements of millions of celestial objects, including space junk, asteroids, comets, and stars. If Planet 9 is indeed out there, this next-generation telescope could be the one to find it. The existence of this mysterious planet is far from being universally accepted in the scientific community. That is simply because Planet 9 isn't the only explanation for the strange phenomenon occurring beyond Neptune. One theory suggests that a group of distant objects, such as dwarf planets, comets, and moons, might be collectively influencing the orbits of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects. Others believe that a black hole is behind all this. These compressed masses are some of the densest objects in the universe, potentially capable of affecting the orbits of other masses, like how this supposed ghost Planet 9 is believed to be doing. Another bold perspective suggests that our current understanding of the laws of gravity is flawed, actually incomplete. This theory, known as modified Newtonian dynamics, proposes that these distant icy objects exhibit strange behavior not due to influence from another planet, but rather because the immense gravitational field of the Milky Way is influencing them. However, even supporters of this theory acknowledge that it is too early to draw firm conclusions, and much more extensive research is still required. While we continue our relentless hunt for Planet 9, some astronomers have taken it a step further, suggesting the existence of a hypothetical Planet 10. This world has a mass and size like that of Mars or Earth and is located on the edges of the Kuiper Belt. But the thing is, if this alleged Planet 10 is indeed as small as scientists believe, it might not have enough gravity to clear its orbit of debris. And that is pretty similar to what happens with Pluto, being one of the reasons why it got into trouble back in 2006. So yeah, it's better not to get too excited. This supposed Planet 10 might end up classified as another dwarf planet. It was 1994. It was dark, so no one saw two silhouettes opening the emergency exits of a glass dome complex in Arizona known as Biosphere 2. They were determined to free 7 people locked inside for a month, risking their lives in the name of science. The mission was accomplished, but they got hit with trespassing and vandalism charges. The vandals were Abigail Ayling and Mark Van Pillow. They were among the first 8 poor devils who lived in that place as guinea pigs, and they didn't want anyone else to go through the same horrors they had experienced. $150 million were spent to see if humans could create suitable living conditions on other planets, like Mars. To do this, scientists built a mini-world with over 3,000 species of plants and animals. Biosphere 2 was a sealed-off 3-acre habitat, complete with its own mini rainforest, a private beach with a coral reef, a grassland savanna, a marsh, and even a desert. Between 1991 and 1993, nothing could enter or exit that place. The group of 8 people locked inside called themselves Biospherians, rocking matching Star Trek-like jumpsuits, growing their own food, and breathing their own air. They began with high hopes and a 5-star hotel-style breakfast, but things took a darker turn over the months. The whole team was starving and turning orange. In Biosphere 1, which is the real Earth, you can order a pizza in 2 minutes. But inside Biosphere 2, it took them an endless 4 months to whip up a margarita-style pie. They had to harvest wheat for the dough and milk goats for the cheese. The goal was to be completely self-sufficient, and they became part of an atmosphere, quite literally. When they breathed out, their CO2 fed the sweet potatoes they were growing, and those sweet potatoes became part of them since they were essentially eating the same carbons over and over again. They had so many sweet potato feasts that their skin actually turned orange from all the excess beta-carotene. What seemed like a funny situation at the time highlighted a big issue. The crop yields in Biosphere 2 were a total disappointment, and the crew was starving. They were going crazy from hunger, and moments of sudden anger led to doing regrettable things, like stealing bananas from the basement storeroom. At some point, the freezer had to be locked. Over the first 6 months, each of them lost between 18 and 58 pounds of weight. Every day, someone took charge of weighing out fresh food for the cook, logging the information about nutrients into the computer to make sure the crew hit their recommended calorie, protein, and fat goals. Initially, meals were served buffet style, but as the crew got hungrier, the cooks started to meticulously divide their food into equal portions. Their diet, mostly sweet potatoes, carrots, fruits, and occasional meat on Sundays, were supposed to keep them going during those exhausting 80-hour work weeks of heavy physical labor. Biospherians were leaving every meal still hungry, and they had recurring dreams of McDonald's hamburgers, sushi, Snickers bars, and cheesecake. The air was running out. The entire place was completely sealed, with steel and glass at the top and a solid steel floor underneath. Managers made sure to check everything coming in to avoid synthetic materials emitting harmful gases. Living areas were furnished with wood and wool, and they couldn't use chemical deodorants or blow out birthday candles. Biospherians were counting on the food they grew and their many rainforests to produce enough oxygen for them to survive. However, they were losing oxygen very fast, drowning in their own carbon dioxide emissions, and worst of all, they had no idea why. With another 9 months of the experiment to go, oxygen levels had dropped from 21% to around 15%, which feels like living at the top of Mount Fuji. They felt awful, basically dragging themselves around the biosphere. They couldn't even finish a sentence without stopping to catch a breath. Then sleep apnea kicked in, with some of them waking up gasping for air. To bring down the carbon levels inside Biosphere 2, they tried some desperate moves, like growing plants like crazy, cutting back on watering the soil as much as possible, and even giving up on tilling. Nothing worked. So everyone decided they had hit a dangerously low point and asked for help. Refrigerated trucks showed up to pump more pure oxygen into Biosphere 2. As soon as the gas started flowing in, they burst out laughing and began running around. The ecosystem was a total mess. Hummingbirds and honeybees vanished after a couple of months, so plants weren't getting pollinated anymore. Worms and broad mites attacked crops, and cockroaches just took over. 4 species of cockroaches were brought inside to recycle organic matter, but the regular household cockroach was the ultimate survivor. They somehow sneaked in and multiplied, becoming a serious threat to crops. At night, the kitchen got flooded with cockroaches as soon as the lights went out. To combat the infestation, the group greased coffee mugs with lubricant and put pieces of papaya inside as bait. Roaches would climb inside, but they couldn't scale the slippery sides to escape. Being hungry, lacking oxygen, dealing with bug infestations, that's enough to make anyone go nuts. Heated arguments led to cups being thrown and people being spat at. Eventually, the whole group just split into 2. They stopped talking and could walk right past one another in the hallways without even making eye contact. Half of them wanted more food and oxygen to continue the research with some dignity, while the other half believed in survival without external help, no matter the costs. The truth is, the sealed chamber had been breached long before that. Just 2 weeks after they got inside, a biospherian named Jane Pointer cut off the tip of her finger in a cooking accident while making rice. The mission's doctor tried sewing the tip back on, but it didn't work, and her finger turned black within days. She went to a hospital outside for surgery, and a couple hours later, she sneaked back inside, carrying a duffel bag filled with supplies like computer parts and color film. Reporters would only learn of that sneaky delivery months later, and because of that, many people have questioned the credibility of the entire experiment. Media treated the experiment like a reality show, branding it as trendy ecological entertainment. Headline news around the world made it sound as if they were on the brink of losing their lives, to the point where families were concerned, calling the biospherians to check if they were really okay. The group felt like they were in a human zoo, with tourists coming from far away to peer into the glass cage. In the first 6 months alone, more than 150,000 people visited the place. Biosphere 2 ended up becoming a pop culture punchline, inspiring a comedy movie called Biodome and decades of funny sketches. You might be wondering why none of them quit the experiment and walked out the front door. Well, none of the environmentalists wanted to be the first to admit it was too much to handle. Plus, they were all still hopeful they could somehow crack the puzzle of building Earth number 2. By the end, they had managed to find 7 tons of missing oxygen. It had been absorbed by the concrete. Even though being breathless all the time might seem like the biggest challenge they face, the Biospherians said that learning how to deal with people in a closed environment was even harder. It looks like the experiment was a huge failure, but the group did learn a lot of valuable lessons. They proved that a sealed ecosystem could work for years. They contributed to studies on reef restoration, and their farms showed that high productivity and full nutrient recycling could be achieved without toxic chemicals. In case you wonder, this wasn't the end of the glass complex. The second mission inside Biosphere 2 took place in March 1994. Now, you can go back to the beginning of the video to understand how that worked out. The protective shield of our planet decays and eventually fails. So do our satellites. First, communication satellites in the highest orbits go down. Next, astronauts in low Earth orbit can no longer contact their mission control center. And finally, hazardous, relentless cosmic rays start bombarding everything on Earth, causing havoc and devastation. Are these the terrifying consequences of the planet's magnetic field reversal we're going to face? Right now, as you're watching this video, Earth's north magnetic pole is extremely out of whack. It's so serious that scientists will have to update the global magnetic field model released a mere 4 years ago. Does it all mean that the magnetic pole of our planet will flip soon? Well, be patient, we'll figure it out a bit later. You see, the magnetic pole is moving quite erratically from the Canadian Arctic towards Siberia, and these movements are very unpredictable. But it's normal for the pole to be moving. There are long-term records from London and Paris that prove that the North Magnetic Pole moves randomly around the rotational North Pole over periods of several hundred years. But the most astonishing thing about its movement is that it's speeding up. Around the mid-1990s, the magnetic pole unexpectedly accelerated from a bit over 9 miles to 34 miles a year. And recently, the pole crossed the international date line, moving toward the eastern hemisphere. The European Space Agency launched extremely accurate magnetic field satellites in 2013. Thanks to them, researchers have superb data they can use not only to make magnetic field maps, but also to update them every 6 to 12 months. That's how they were able to notice that the core field was weakening too. It might be a sign that the planet's magnetic field is about to flip. To understand this process better, we need to figure out how the core field works. Let's say we've got a bar magnet that runs through the center of our planet and has a north and a south pole. This magnet is incredibly strong, representing about 75% of the intensity of our planet's magnetic field at the surface. Our bar magnet is not only moving, but is also getting weaker, by about 7% every century. Admittedly, this bar isn't the perfect representation of the core field. It's more like electric currents generating Earth's magnetic field. Still, this model makes it easier to see what's happening to our planet now. The magnetic field of our planet plays an important role in protecting us from dangerous radiation and geomagnetic activity, which is the product of the interaction between the solar wind and Earth's magnetosphere. Earth's magnetic field also moves. Scientists have been studying and tracking the movement of the magnetic poles for hundreds of years. The historical motions of these poles indicates changes in the global geometry of the magnetic field of our planet, and they may point to the beginning of the field reversal too. That's what the flip between the north and south magnetic poles is sometimes called. You see, if the north magnetic pole moves a bit, it isn't a big deal. But a complete reversal might have a serious impact on the climate of our planet, as well as modern technology. Luckily, such flips don't happen overnight. The entire process stretches over thousands of years. Plus, even though the magnetic pole weakens during a pole reversal, it doesn't disappear completely. So those scary events from the beginning of the video aren't likely to happen to us. The magnetosphere will continue protecting the planet from cosmic rays and charged solar particles, even though there might be some amount of particulate radiation that will make it to Earth's surface. Magnetic fields are generated by moving electric charges. If some material allows these charges to easily move in it, it's called a conductor. Metal is a great conductor, and we often use it to transfer electric currents from one place to another. In this case, the electric current is negative charges called electrons moving through the metal. The current is what generates a magnetic field. Earth has a liquid iron core. In other words, there are layers and layers of conducting material inside our planet. Currents of charges are constantly moving through the core, and the liquid metal is also moving and circulating there, generating the magnetic field. This magnetic field, in turn, produces something resembling a bubble around the planet. It's called the magnetosphere, and it's located above the uppermost part of the atmosphere. This layer shields and deflects high-energy cosmic radiation, which otherwise would be extremely dangerous to people and other forms of life on Earth. The magnetosphere also interacts with the ionosphere, the layer of our planet's atmosphere containing loads of ions and free electrons and capable of reflecting radio waves. The interaction between these two layers and the magnetized solar winds is what scientists call space weather. The solar wind is normally mild, and there's no space weather whatsoever. But sometimes, the sun starts shedding gargantuan magnetized clouds of gas that can accelerate to incredible speeds. They're called coronal mass ejections, or CMEs. They're ejected from the sun over the course of several hours. CMEs usually look like giant twisted ropes and can occur spontaneously. Their frequency varies according to the 11-year-long solar cycle. For example, at a solar minimum, you can observe one ejection per day, and when the sun is in its most active phase, there might be 3 CMAs per day. Coronal mass ejections disrupt the calm flow of the solar wind and cause serious disturbances that can damage stuff both in space near Earth, like satellites, and on the planet's surface. If coronal mass ejections make it to Earth, their interaction with the magnetosphere generates geomagnetic storms. Those can trigger auroras, happening when a stream of energized particles hits the atmosphere and lights up. And then there are also solar flares. They develop more rapidly and with much more energy than coronal mass ejections. Solar flares often occur soon after coronal mass ejections. The most powerful volcanic eruptions pale in comparison to solar flares that release 10 million times more energy. Within a few minutes, one solar flare can give out billions of tons of charged particles. Solar flares are also insanely hot, with temperatures reaching several million degrees Fahrenheit. Astronomers believe that such bursts of solar radiation happen when the sun's magnetic field gets twisted in some regions. At one moment, all the pent-up energy is released. The star sends out light and particles, mostly electrons and protons. Most solar flares last for minutes, but some continue for hours. A powerful solar storm can potentially cause a devastating global blackout on Earth. If not for the Earth's magnetosphere, the effects of the sun's activity would be much more devastating. Luckily, the magnetosphere deflects most of the solar material hurtling towards our planet from our star at a speed of over 1 million miles per hour. But even so, during space weather events, there's a lot of hazardous radiation near Earth. It can potentially harm astronauts and spacecraft. Plus, space weather can damage large conducting systems, for example, pipelines and power grids, by overloading currents running inside them. Scientists regularly map and track the overall orientation and shape of our planet's magnetic field. To do it, they use local measurements of the field's orientation and magnitude. That's why they've been able to conclude that the location of the North Magnetic Pole has moved by almost 600 miles since the first measurements were taken in 1831. The magnetic field of our planet reverses on a timescale varying between 100,000 to 1 million years. One can tell how often it happens by looking at volcanic rocks at the bottom of the ocean. They capture the orientation and strength of Earth's magnetic field at the time of their creation. So, dating those rocks gives us a good picture of how our planet's magnetic field has evolved over time. From a geological point of view, field reversals happen quite fast, but they are extremely slow from a human perspective. A complete reversal normally takes a couple of thousand years, but during this time, the orientation of the magnetosphere may shift, exposing more of Earth to cosmic radiation. Such events tend to change the concentration of ozone in the atmosphere. In any case, scientists can't say for sure when the next field reversal will happen, but they keep mapping and tracking the movement of our planet's magnetic north. By the way, the Earth isn't the only planet with a magnetic field. Gas giants, like Jupiter, also have a conducting metallic hydrogen layer that generates their magnetic fields. Jupiter's internal magnetic field prevents the solar wind from interacting directly with the planet's atmosphere.
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos. That would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabi people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on tray goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world. And it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
At some point in its long and very interesting history, our dear planet Earth was sort of snoozing, just doing its planetary thing, spinning around the sun. And then, bam, life starts getting fancy. Plants and animals start strutting their stuff, showing off their complexity. Fast forward a bit, about 65 million years ago to be exact, and a cosmic disaster strikes, or at least that's what we presume. An asteroid probably smashed into Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and other big animals. We can't pinpoint specifics about the asteroid, but we do know that it was extremely large and it crashed into our precious planet, creating a dusty mess that settled everywhere. You can still find remnants of that dust layer in sedimentary rocks today. If you dig beneath it, you'll uncover a whole bunch of fossils. These prehistoric creatures were living it up before the asteroid crashed the party. Think of it as the planet going on a cleaning spree, leaving a bunch of empty spaces waiting to be filled. And guess who took the opportunity? Mammals! These furry little critters were the ones to rise to fame. But why is it that this disaster became such a great opportunity for mammals? It's pretty simple, actually. With no big bullies around, they grew, multiplied, and had a population expanse. All kinds of mammals joined to fill in the blanks. Primates, rodents, basically, the whole furry gang. We're talking about placental mammals, marsupials, and even egg-laying mammals, adding some serious variety to the mix. We like to think of primates as our closest relatives here on Earth. What's their story? Well, around 63 million years ago, just a couple of million years after the dinosaurs' final